Tonight, DC has managed to surprise everyone by publishing another issue of Superman Unchained. Didn't think they had it in them. Over in Earth 2, a new Kryptonian comes forth after the old Superman turns evil. And in Action Comics, a new Kryptonian comes forth after the old Superman turns evil. There's some real hacks working at DC this time around. All that and more tonight on the Not So New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 148 of the Not So New 52. I am your host, and I know I don't really share a whole lot of personal stories with you. I mean, I share a few, but not like every week. But this time I do have a little something I want to share. It's not like, my therapist or whatever kind of talk, just a funny little anecdote that happened. Not funny, but you'll see. So, 2 days ago, as of the release of this episode, I went to boot up my computer. And as I did so, I got hit with a blue screen. Now, for any of you youngins who only know about iPads and whatnot, a blue screen is not something you ever want to see on your computer. It means that something has gone so horribly wrong that everything had to just immediately stop. My blue screen was coming up and saying, "We couldn't find Windows," which... that's a problem for literally everything I do. So I tried rebooting it. I tried a few other things. I tried calling Geek Squad. Let me tell you, don't waste your time on that, because they will just tell you, turn it on, turn it off, bring it in. That is literally all they were good for. So, I then decided, okay, well, you know what? I have nothing left to lose. I'm just going to try to recover whatever I can. I put my computer in safe mode, which for some reason allowed it to get into Windows. And I was like, well, that's good. I got all my files out that I could. And I was like, all right, if I need to reinstall Windows, so be it. And then it just worked. I just logged in one more time to get ready to shut everything down. And it just let me in. And so far, nothing else wrong has happened. It wouldn't let me launch Google Chrome for some reason. I had to reinstall that, but that was the only weird thing I could find. So if anyone has any idea what the hell happened to my computer, I'm just going to say magic until I get any further advice on that. I guess I should say Brother Eye or something, but it didn't even feel that malicious. It just felt stupid. Anyway. That's my little personal story. I hope I've endeared you to me. Let's talk about comics. So coming out this week, we are on the 33rd month, not counting all the special months in between, and as such, we have 13 comics to do, and those are, in no particular order, Batwing, Action Comics, Batman/Superman, Superman Unchained, Green Lantern, Aquaman and the Others, Earth 2, Green Arrow, Justice League 3000, Phantom Stranger, Swamp Thing, and our two weeklies, Batman Eternal and Future's End. Out of those, event comic-wise, we have Superman Doomed is part of Action Comics, and Green Lantern is kinda finishing up the Uprising storyline, which is a crossover with Green Lantern Corps, but there is one more part to that, so stay tuned. Beyond that, pretty normal week. I might go a little bit over because I've got a few things I want to share, but beyond that, it's a pretty normal week, all things considered. So sit back, relax, and enjoy Superman. Action Comics number 33, written by Greg Pak, art by Aaron Kuder. This is the first part of the next chapter of Superman Doomed, titled very creatively Super Doom. So last time I believe was Superman Wonder Woman, and we had Superman basically saying, all right, I'm going out into space. I'm going to blow off some steam out there. Hopefully I can deal with it. So he left out there. This issue picks up in Smallville, and we've got Lana. If you remember, Smallville is all comatose. Everybody there is in a coma, and Lana's like, yeah, I recognized that there was some sort of weird space signal coming out of all of their heads, so I'm going to go out there and figure out what it is. And I've teamed up with Steel, because Steel has apparently got a spaceship. So they go out in the spaceship, they're ready to go. Apparently some government drones are tracking Steel because he went to go talk to Superman even after being declared enemy of the state or whatever. So they just take off and they don't worry about that at all. But as soon as the drones start coming after him, and Steel's just like, well, I don't know if Superman would go up against government drones. And Lana's like, let me tell you something about Superman. He loves punching government drones. So they get into the gun turrets and they just start zapping all of them right out of the sky. And Lana and him are having a good time. Meanwhile, somewhere out past Mars, Superman has destroyed every single meteorite that's over like half a kilometer in size. He's just smashed them all to bits, but he was hoping he could burn off the excess rage energy or whatever. It didn't work. It's only made Doomsday stronger. And at that point, something attacks him, and he's like, what in the heck? It's laughing at me. Whatever just attacked me. What is that? And it turns out it is Supergirl, who, of course, at this point is a Red Lantern. And she's like, hey, how's it going, cousin? I hear that you need to get in touch with your angry side. And Superman's just internally is just like, okay, no, please. I don't want to let this out any more than I already have. And he tells her, like, go home, you're going to get hurt. And she's like, pshaw. Look, you don't even realize, like, yeah, okay, me and you are both in terms side with our, like, angry sides now. But why is that such a bad thing? Like, we protect the Earth. It's not like they should be thanking us that we showed up at all, regardless of, like, what our current state is, you know? But you let them fill you with fear. And she just starts punching him. And then Superman's just like, internally, I say, no, I'm not going to go after that. Externally, Doomsday's pretty much taking control. And he just wants something to smash. So they go to the other side of the galaxy, and we run into a planet called Archon 23, which is apparently a moon colony that is about to explode. And it's got lizard people called the Char, who apparently are historically intertwined with Kryptonians or whatnot. But it turns out their planet is like the moon that they're on is being destroyed by something, and everyone on there who hasn't evacuated yet, they're all going to die unless someone does something. And Superman's like, Superman part of me says I should help, and the Doomsday part of me wants to go smash whatever's causing this. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but regardless, Supergirl just takes off. She's like, all right, well, you got this. Anyway, I got to go back to Earth because my book says I should be over at Earth now. Bye. So she heads off that way. Meanwhile, down on the moon, turns out there's a guy named Harak who he has a hunger for moons. And he's told this planet a year ago, he said, hey, Char, I'm going to be back here in a year. You all better be evacuated by then because I swear I'm going to eat your planet at that point. It's a curse I have. I have to do it. And I guess they didn't fully believe him or something, but regardless, they're just now evacuating the last few people off. And he's like, nope, too late. I gave you a full year. How dare you? And he goes to, like, kill the rest of the people. But at that point, Superman comes down and all the Char just like, all right, well, this is just completely out of our hands now. Good luck, you two. And they start trying to fly off. And Superman does manage to pick up one of the ships and just throws it into deep space. So the Harak guy blasts Super Doom, and he just tanks it. He's just like, all right, I'm holding off. I'm not going to attack until I hear that every single living thing has made it off this planet. And as he listens to the heartbeats, he hears them all getting out of the way, and he's like, awesome. Now I can do this. And he just starts beating the ever-loving crap out of Harak. And Harak is like, Jesus Christ, man, what are you? I'm just here to eat some moons. What's the big deal? So as they are making their way out to the planet's rim or whatever, it turns out that there's some debris floating around there, and it's going to smash the fleet up. And I genuinely can't tell what's happening here with Harak as to whether or not he is trying to save them or not. He rushes out there to, like, stop the meteorites, I guess. And Doomsday's like, oh, there's not enough time. He can't do it. But, like, I want to be able to do something, but I don't, I've got Doomsday in me. And then inside, we see the mental image of Doomsday. And Doomsday's just like, dude, shut up. I'm not actually Doomsday. I'm a virus. I'm a virus that is, like, making you more evolved to kill. And whatever you do with those powers, that's up to you, man. Like, you could still be Superman with the powers, but I'm not actually Doomsday inside of you. So go ahead and accept what you've become and do your damn job. And Superman's like, I mean, it sounds logical, but I don't know if I should be trusting Doomsday in my head, you know? But it doesn't even matter at that point. We see him unleash his death mist ability, which is these long tendrils of gas, mist, whatever, and it grabs hold of the meteorites and just turns them into dust so that all the people are able to get free. And Harrock looks back and he's just like, you saved him. You look like a monster, though, so what are you? And he's like, I don't know. But then immediately he goes out and he starts attacking Harrock. He just, again, beats the ever-loving crap out of him. So then we go back over to Lana and Steel, who are now out in space, and they're looking for that signal. They're tracking it, but then all of a sudden Steel gets a little blip about the giant explosions going on where Superman is on the far side of the galaxy. And he's like, I think that's Superman. His energy signature. That's Superman out there. We have to go get him. And then Lana's like, but what about the signals? All the people in Smallville, they need us. And Lana has a little crisis there of like, what do we do? How do we solve this immediately? But before she can make any sort of solution, the signals get more intense, and they are beaming back down to Earth this time. So looking down on Earth, all of a sudden, people just start going comatose well outside of Smallville. It's spreading, it's engulfing the rest of the state, soon to be the planet. So Lana calls down, she's like, Lois, you gotta pick up. Well, first she tries calling actual police, but then she tries calling Lois. It's like, Lois, you gotta pick up. Hey, it's Smallville, it's coming to Metropolis. Get on the news, tell everybody to stop their cars or else everyone's gonna die as soon as they fall out of the airplanes and stuff. And we see Lois's eyes are glowing, and she's just like, oh, calm down, Lana. Everything's fine. Why don't you come back down here? We can talk about it. And she's like, wait a minute, Lois. You're in Metropolis. Why aren't you affected by this already? And she's just like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm looking out the window. Everything's fine. Meanwhile, everything is in just shambles. It's hell. And she's just like, oh, wait a minute. You're the one who told everyone not to trust Superman, and that caused him to get off the planet. And now this thing is happening. I'm thinking you might be behind this, Lois. And she's just like, I don't know what you're talking about. So Lana hangs up, and she's like, all right, Steel, this is all gone to hell. It's all been a setup. We got to go find him and bring him back. That's the only thing that we could possibly do right now. And Steel's like, okay, but you might want to look out the front window. And out the front window, we see whoever is sending this signal has already brought his replacement in. And we get Cyborg Superman, along with a horde of, I'm going to call them space walruses. They've got giant tusks, and they're like ovals. So yeah, space walruses. Okay, so I get what they're doing with the idea of oh no, these are just new powers. It's not actually Doomsday inside of you. But clearly it's also messing with his mental state, so it's kind of a messed up it's not a matter of he's still Superman inside if his mental state's being messed up as well. If your body changes and your mind changes, are you really you anymore in any meaningful capacity? One for the ancients, but for this book, it doesn't feel like him saying oh no, you've just been evolved into a thing. No, he's changed entirely. So I don't know. I liked it more the way it was handled, I think, last issue, which was a physical representation of Doomsday and a physical representation of Clark in his head, just battling for control. And Superman is what's caught in the middle there. I like that represent. This one, not so much. I do like how we're finally getting a payoff to whatever the Brainiac Lois plot is. For God's sakes, it's taken too long. So, yeah, next issue is going to be Superman, Wonder Woman. And I'd say this one's probably, I'll give it a 6.5. It just doesn't quite hit that 7 mark for me. I think it was a bit weird with the Supergirl Supergirl already came out and it said, check out this book to see what happened. And this one kind of felt oh, we just threw her in there because why not? It didn't feel like she had to be in this book. He could have just as easily come across this planet regardless. So, I don't know. Editing was a bit weird on this, but I'm going to say 6.5 overall. Green Lantern number 33, written by Robert Venditti, art by Billy Tan. So this is part 5 of the Uprising story, and it's pretty much the end. So last time over in Green Lantern Corps, the John Stewart and co. went to the Daxamite planet. They realized that the Durlans were already there. They took over a bunch of Daxamite bodies, and they're on their way to the Zezin planet in order to get some fuel. So we see the Zezin planet, the Durlan fleet's already shown up. They land, the Ancient's sitting there, and they're just like, ah yes, here you go. Your prize, Mr. Ancient, one of the hands of a Daxamite so that you may absorb its DNA. Meanwhile, over on Mogo, Hal's getting caught up with John, and John's just like, yeah, Daxamites, they're going for an energy source. You know where that's going to be? It's just like, yep, we already know the planet. We've got a whole thing. We're going to beat them there. And Kilowog's just like, well, they're already there. So we might need to think of a different plan. And I was like, oh, God, all right. Everyone get to that planet now. Just call it out. All systems, let's go. So over on the planet, we see the Ancient reach out, try to absorb the Daxamite ability. But because they're under a yellow sun, it's a lot of power to just try to turn into a Daxamite, and they don't have that kind of energy. So he's just like, all right, whatever. Guys, this is it. I'll take the DNA in a minute. We're all going to drink up from this pool of living energy or whatever, and we're going to be able to step out of the shadows and into the sun. And then, of course, the Green Lantern Corps just shows up. So they're all there. They immediately land between the Durlans and the lake of lava or whatever, and just build a giant-ass Green Lantern wall. And just be like, all right, nobody breaks this wall no matter what. And one of the, a couple of the little kids inside of the energy pool come up, and they're just like, what are you? He's like, oh, I'm a Green Lantern. He's like, no, like, why are you so dim? He's like, well, a lot of girlfriends have said that to me, but I'm a human. Just like, weird. So at that point, the Zezin Green Lantern, Goran's son, I believe his name is, says like, all right, get out of here, you guys. Come on. We're going to take care of this big fight scene. So Hal apparently already has a plan. He's like, all right, Mogo, go ahead, start it off. And he has Mogo throw down some asteroids at the planet right around where the Durlans are. And he's like, all right, we're just going to keep chucking down asteroids until you all are dead. And at that point, the Durlans are like, do we go around the wall? What do we do? And the Ancient's just like, nah, man, we're too close. Everyone turn into your biggest thing. Let's go. We're charging. And Mogo keeps on throwing down asteroids as the whole rest of the Durlans change. And they try to hold the wall as best they can. But of course, they're super powerful Durlans. There's some cracks in there every once in a while, but they do their best to dig in. Meanwhile, the Ancient Durlan starts coming through, and he's just like, ha-ha! We're craving through. We're going to get through. No matter what, we're going to be able to do this. You've lost, Green Lantern. We've taken the universe from you. Ha-ha! And he specifically says that you have no friends left. And that's where the Hal is just like, yeah, you're right. That's why we brought some of yours. And then coming up the rear on the other side of the Durlan horde are the Bradesmen, who, of course, were double-crossed like 2 issues ago by the Durlans. And they are being commanded by whatever her name is. And they're all attacking the Durlans from the rear. So then the Durlans have to turn around and fight. And the Green Lantern is just like, you sure you don't want to quit, Durlans? And he's just like, no, you may think you're smart, but I've had millennia to plan this, and I definitely have a way out of this. And Green Lantern's just like, yeah, all right, we'll see about that. So he makes a whole bunch of constructs of, like, soldiers that blast through the wall. They're able to start attacking Durlans as well. It's just shooting fish in a barrel. Like, all the Durlans are out. The Ancient manages to crawl his way over to the edge of the pool of energy. And he's like, oh, you can't stop me now. I'm too close. And then Hal just steps on his tentacle and puts him in a box. And he's just like, well, there we go. We did it. And then one of the tiny little guys in the energy pool comes up and goes, just raspberries in his face. So at that point, it's like all done. John and the rest of his team come in at that point, and Hal's like, well, you missed it, but I could use some help transporting all these Durlans. We're going to put them all back in the science cells, and we're going to call it a day. And we see Fatality bend over, and she's, talking to the little energy beings, the Zezins, and Hal's just like, all right, well, you guys stay here. We'll take care of that. You guys get some fun in the sun. And John, wink, wink. So he goes and he takes the Durlans back to the science cells. He talks to the Ancient, and the Ancient's just like, haha, you think you may have won this, Green Lantern, but I've ruined the Green Lantern image. So what is the universe really if you are not loved anymore? And I'm an ancient, so I'll just live forever. I'll just wait until your time is done. And Hal's just like, yeah, we're cops. Like, clearly people aren't going to like us. But yeah, we do the job because it needs to be done. Anyway, and he just like starts a little song of 1 billion bottles of beer on the wall for the ancient to start singing, and he flies away smiling. And then all of a sudden, John pops on the comms. He's like, hey, we weren't done. We still have one more part. Everything's gone wrong. And then his transmission cuts out. So what happened to John? Find out in Green Lantern Corps number 33. Yeah, so this definitely feels like the end of the event. Like, if it weren't for literally the last 2 panels here, that'd be it. That would actually be all that's needed. Maybe the next part will be worth it. I do like the idea that the Durlans do have one extra little master stroke in them just to see like what it is. I'm very curious as to whether or not it'll work out though, because it could just come off as like, really? Yeah, that was it. Especially if if our heroes end up winning, then it's like, what was the point of the extra part? So I hope it's something interesting at the very least. Beyond that, I'll give this one I'll give it a flat 7. I liked it. It was fun the whole way through. The art did feel a little bit flat at times, but it made up for it in the humor of like the Zezin kids. They were pretty fun. I only mentioned like 1 or 2 times they were there, but they were around consistently throughout. So yeah, it's an okay book. It's in terms of the event, I'd like to say that it was fine, but we still got one more part. So we'll see if we make or break it that time. But for this, 7. Batwing number 33, written by Justin Gray and Jimmy Palmiotti, art by Eduardo Pansica. So last issue was pretty much the end of the arc, and we are definitely in the phase of your book has been canceled, wrap it up. Because this is just an entirely new storyline. It's definitely just going to be a 2-parter, but we'll see how it goes here. So we open up underneath a bridge with some homeless people, and there's a man there who apparently works security at Arkham, and he says, let me tell you all the story of Gruesome George, the most scary man to ever be in Blackgate or Arkham, and he stole my eyes. And we see this dude has just like sewed up eye holes. So long time ago, there was a kid. His name was George. His dad made him fight in backyard brawls for money, but George just really loved the violence. He was all in on it. So one day, when he turned an adult, he got arrested for battery and aggravated assault, and once he got into prison, he just flourished. He got in fights all the time. He loved it so very much. But somehow he ended up getting released after a while, and he tried filling his vice with other things. He tried money, women, crime, but all of it's just like, nah, I want to go back to prison. So one day he walks into a police station and puts 5 cops in an ICU. And we get a little bit on his father was apparently the type person who would like hold a hot iron to his head and do stuff like that. So either way, George made it back into prison, but it turns out that because he was so messed up for Blackgate or whatever prison he went to, he was instead sent over to Arkham. And Arkham he was not happy about because they put him on a bunch of pills that he was basically just walking dead the whole time. He was asleep. He was barely alive. He was not able to punch anyone. And then 5 years ago, as he's sitting there in Arkham, he sees on the news Batman has appeared, and despite him being in kind of a mentally catatonic state, he's taking in all the Bat news all the time, and then finally Forever Evil happens, and Arkham gets freed, and George manages to get out, but he's still in a straitjacket, so he picks a fight with Killer Croc, and Killer Croc tears open his suit along with most of his blood and guts, but it manages to let George free. So now we cut to today, and we see a bunch of criminals have been beaten to a pulp, probably killing them, and the bat symbol is left behind, spray painted over them. And Batwing's like, well, that's a copycat, because there's no way that's Batman. Let's see where this goes. And he finds a blood trail, and he tracks it across Gotham until finally he gets to an abandoned train yard. And so at that point, he picks up one of the trails of blood, and he does like an analyzing of it, gets some criminal matches from it. Turns out it's George. No surprise there. So he's like, all right, well, time to go in there and get this Arkham escapee. So as he's going in, he gets a call from his mom. And apparently his sister, God, I wish I could remember the older sister's name. Is it Tanya? One of them's named Tanya. Regardless, the older sister, the one who's catatonic, they're doing a birthday party for her. And Luke doesn't think it's a good idea because, you know, his sister's catatonic. It's not like she's even going to notice that anyone's there. And he says so to his mom. And the mom does not take it well. So then his dad comes on the phone. And Lucius is like, why did you make your mom cry? And he's like, I just was saying, like, the birthday party. And he's like, well, whatever. Keep your thoughts to yourself. Don't make your mom cry. Also, what are you doing with your life, basically? And Luke is just like, I've got some stuff keeping me busy. And he's like, yeah, probably, whatever. Look, I'm tired of you making excuses. Apologize to your mom. Bye. And he just hangs up. And Luke's like, great, awesome. So happy that's going to happen. So he makes his way into the inner workings of the rail yard, and he finds George, who has fashioned himself a makeshift Batman costume. But like bat ears that actually look like bat's ears, and like it's like 50% man bat, 50% Batman. And he's currently trying to like dig bullets out of his wounds on his stomach. And he's like, all right, that's weird. So Luke starts talking to him, and he's just like, hey, you need to go to the hospital, man. You're bleeding out. He's like, don't worry about it. I got out most of the bullets. And he's very slow. I'm not going to imitate that, but he's very slow in speaking. And he's like, oh yeah, I've got out the bullets. The rest of them are going to stay in me like a piggy bank. And he's like, okay, well, I can see why you were in Arkham. Anyway, you're dressed as Batman. You a big Batman fan? And he's just like, oh, are you? And he's like, no, I'm kind of a coworker. He's like, oh, you work with Batman? He's like, I mean, technically, yes, sure. Anyway, hospital, let's go. And he's just like, no, I'm not going to the hospital. You should leave now. And he's like, okay, but you've hurt people, George. We need to talk about that. And he's just like, if you wake the kids, I'm going to have to hurt you. And Batman's like, oh, you have kids here. Well, that's going to make this conversation radically different, George. So at that point, George is like sewing himself up, and Batwing's like, I'm going to go look around for these kids, okay? You just keep doing your thing. And George goes and tackles him and just starts like bashing his head in the ground. But of course, he's wearing Batwing armor. He can barely feel a thing. So he starts fighting against George, doing a good bit of attacks. And I do like George's point here where Batwing says, hey, You've beaten up a lot of people. You're a fugitive and you're breaking the law. And George replies, Batman breaks the law all the time. You break the law. I finally found an outlet for my anger in a way that like helps people. Why should I have to go back to jail for that? I won't do it. And so he continues fighting against Batwing, tackles him down some stairs. Batwing manages to turn the tables enough to knock him unconscious. And he's like, all right, well, got that dealt with, but Jesus. So he drags him out to the front lawn, calls 911, says like, hey, I got this fugitive, send the police, he's knocked out, and then just hangs up. And he's like, all right, well, here's some med stuff to make sure you don't bleed out before the medics arrive, but good luck, George. And then Batwing flies away. And we see the cops and medics arriving to pick up George, and he's still unconscious, mind you, but as they approach him, all of a sudden there's this growling noise behind them. And then one by one, cops start dropping, and they're firing off shots like crazy, screaming for help, yelling out, what are they? But as we see in the final page here, George sits up and he's like, oh, hey, kids, I knew you would save me. And we see the kids you were referring to. Best I can describe them, they're chupacabra. They are horrific little creatures that are just half goat, half lizard looking stuff. It's weird. But yeah, that's Gruesome George. At least part one, maybe. I like the story. I like the idea of setting up this character here, someone who's just, really into violence, because that actually is a good mirror to the Bat family. This idea of like, okay, well, when you do violence, it's good. When someone else does violence, it's bad. And it seems like the only thing is who the violence is done to. But this guy did the violence on the right people, and he's still viewed as bad. So, I don't know. I kind of like that as a perspective. I would like to see that explored more, but I don't think that's the point of the story. I think we're going to get much different things. It definitely feels like this is the, hey, you've been canceled, wrap it up kind of story, because I mean, even just looking at the cover of this, the cover is Batwing's hands holding a bunch of pills. That has nothing to do with this. There is nothing at all that has anything to do with pills, medication, anything like that. It just feels like this was put in very last minute. But it's not a bad story. So I'm going to give this one I'll give it a 7. I think I enjoyed it enough to give it the 7, but it's just barely squeaking by that. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing if we do get a second part to this next month. Superman Unchained number 7, written by Scott Snyder, art by Jim Lee. So it's been months since the last issue, but last time, God, how did it end? We had Blight getting beat up by Superman, and then they went to the Fortress of Solitude, Superman and Lois Lane, along with the Earthstone or whatever it's called. Blight went to go beat up Batman, and then General Lane showed up outside the Fortress of Solitude ready for war. And this issue picks up with a countdown timer on a hand, and it's counting down from an hour, but we don't know whose hand it is, even by the end of the issue. So we open up the Fortress of Solitude. General Lane's in a mech suit, and he's like, all right, Superman, I'm going to give you a minute, and then you better come out here and give us the Earthstone, because that's what we need. And Lois and Superman inside are basically just like, oh, we can't give him what he wants, so we can't give the government the ability to control all technology like that. And Lois is like, okay, well, you can't win against that army out there. It's too much even for you. Like, what are you going to do? And he's like, well, I have to at least try. Meanwhile, over with Batman, Blight's like, I'm just going to kill you because you made a ring that can fight against my energy signature. So screw that. I can't have that around. And Batman activates some sort of stealth mode, which turns him invisible from Blight. We go back over to Superman. And I'll be honest, pretty much the entirety of the Superman Lois Lane side of things here in the Fortress are basically just Lois saying, like, I'm not going to let you kill yourself against my father. And then her father screaming, you got like 30 seconds left, Superman. And Superman saying, Lois, get out of here. And Lois says, I'm not going anywhere without you. And then he counts down some more. And it just keeps looping like that over and over again. So Superman makes the point here saying, like, there might have been something true in what Wraith said, like, my morals that I've chosen, they were contradictory, and maybe Superman can't last forever, but like this is what needs to be done. And Lois is like, no, I'm not going anywhere without you. So they continue doing all this stuff. Meanwhile, General Lane just skips the countdown after a while. He's just like, screw it, we all know you're just prepping for war in there. I'm not letting you do that. Fire at will, boys. So they start firing, and Superman's like, okay, get out of here now. He's like, I'm not leaving. She's like, fine, whatever, take my hand then, we gotta go. So back in the Batcave, Wraith is looking around trying to find Batman. He uses a super hearing to hear Batman say, Batwing, go. And he's like, oh, what, you're going to fire your little plane at me? I can see it. I can easily stop it. And he's like, that's not the plane I'm firing. And then down from above comes the bigger Batwing just crashing down on a Blight's head. And he's like, all right, very cute, but you're going to run out of toys eventually. And Batman's like, you'd be surprised. As every single Batmobile and Batplane just comes out of the garage and starts flying at Blight. Meanwhile, Superman leads Lois down into a special area, and he's just like, yes, you just step onto this thing, Lois. And she's like, cool, what are we doing? And he's like, you'll be safe here. And then it constructs like this indestructible bubble around her. And he's like, all right, good, I've protected Lois, that's great. Now I got to go do my thing. And he goes and he steps into this little chamber and puts on a suit. And at this point, all the firing has stopped. The fortress has essentially collapsed. And coming out of it, I don't even know how to describe this, man. Imagine, like, the way that Wonder Woman portrays Ares, and now it's Superman armor. So he's got a shield and, like, this crazy axe thing, and Superman's just like, all right, you ready to go? Round one, ding, ding. So we cut back over to the Batcave. Blight has managed to disrupt Batman's stealth stuff. He manages to get a good punch on him, sends him flying across the Batcave, and Blight immediately just starts hammering into him, just being like, you know what? You think that you're a soldier, you're a warrior, but you know how I see you? And Batman's like, yeah, sure, I'll give you a penny for your thoughts. And then out of nowhere, Wonder Woman's in the cave, uses the giant penny to just bash Blight against the wall. So back in the ruins of the fortress, Superman's using his new super cool armor stuff to attack all of the mechs with his crazy like axe weapon. And he says, like, General, you told me a story about two roosters and a wolf, and blah, blah, blah. It somehow means, like, strength of armies or something. But I think you're wrong. The story's about humility. It means helping other people. And we see Wonder Woman helping Batman against Blight. And, of course, Blight fights back against him as well. And General Lane's just like, how dare you tell me the moral of my own story? Like, I'm the one who... Do they even have wolves on your planet? You know nothing about that. Shut up. Just get out of here. So... he's ready to, like, they've broken apart a bit of Superman's super armor here. He's getting it done. And he's like, all right, well, we're here to launch the final bomb. So say hi to everyone on Krypton for us. And they drop a bunch of kryptonite nukes, as far as I could tell, onto Superman. But before it can get to him, we see Lois is there holding the Earthstone. And she manages to disintegrate all of the nukes before they hit him. And immediately, General Lane's just like, what in the hell are you doing here? And Lois is like, hey... yeah, I can hear that voice inside the Earthstone you were talking about. That's weird, but you need to get away from this now. And Superman's like, yeah, you too. And he just super speeds her away real quick and says, like, all right, I'm going to go talk to your dad. Rips open his mech suit and just yells out, like, where is he? And General Lane's just like, okay, first off, why is my daughter? And he's like, nah, tell me where Blight is. So... back in the Batcave, we see Wonder Woman and Batman being beaten up by Blight. He's basically just saying, like, you guys mean nothing. Neither of you have important enough symbols compared to, like, the Superman symbol and all that. And, of course, on the Bat computers, the Superman symbol just appears everywhere. And he's just like, ha ha, that symbol means you're going to get your ass kicked. As an actual line. And all of a sudden, the wall to the Batcave just explodes out. And standing there is Superman, eyes red, saying, all right, Wraith. Let's take a step outside. So, I'll be honest, this book has lost all momentum for me. The fact that it has been so heavily delayed. Like, this moment feels like it should be a big thing. It should be a big moment of like, oh man, the final, like, this whole big thing of Superman gets his super armor and Blight is fighting against Batman and oh wow, he beats up the whole army. I don't care. I got nothing out of this emotionally because, like, it's been months since the last issue. I've completely forgotten everything. The only reason I even partially remembered is I reread the, like, back pages here. I skimmed over it. And even then, like, some of the stuff doesn't look familiar at all. I didn't even remember all the missiles got launched. I didn't remember that Superman beat up Wraith with, like, a magic ring that Batman made. Like, it's in terms of objectively the book, independently of release date, it's fine. It's okay. It's a perfectly nice next chapter, and it's got some cool images. Not going to deny that. But in terms of taking this as the story of serialized storytelling, having these months gap in here just hurts it more than it could ever possibly recover from. So yeah, I'm going to give this one like a 6. It's just, it feels like it's trying to do this big thing, but because of the way it's being released, it's just falling flat, and it's making it feel like these epic moments are just kind of stupid in a lot of ways. So 6 for this. I hope the next one comes out quicker. Batman Superman number 12, written by Greg Pak, art by Tom Raney. So, way back in the first arc, the whole, like, premise for this book was Superman and Batman, before they ever even knew each other, actually met, and they went to Earth 2, and they fought each other. So, this issue picks up with the demon that made that happen, whose name was Kaio, I believe, is narrating, basically saying, like, you stupid heroes, I purposely wiped your mind so that you wouldn't remember this stuff, but now you've run back into Huntress and Power Girl from Earth 2, and it's all coming back to you. And Batman and Superman are there talking, saying, like, yeah, it's all coming back to us, we need to figure this out. So they talk, and they basically just recap the events of the first arc, where there was a demon named Kaio who said that Darkseid would come, and then it wiped our memories. And Superman's like, it also said that Darkseid would go and kill their world. We need to go help them. And Batman's like, okay, but like you're talking about crossing dimensions and maybe going back in time, like that's way beyond our abilities. We'd have to go find Kaio, and immediately Kaio just jumps out and be like, "Here I am!" And then Superman and Batman start attacking as best they can because, of course, Kaio is a chaos demon, and Kaio's just like, "Whoa, whoa, hey, look, guys, here's the thing. I'm gonna give you what you want. I'm gonna give you a chance to go and help Earth 2, but you only have one chance to change the past. So you asked for this," and she sends them back to Earth 2 in the past before everything went wrong. And we see Superman and Batman arrive on the Kent farm. They're just feeding the chickens and raking up leaves or whatnot. And Batman's like, "Hey, Superman, we're intangible here, and I don't think anybody can hear us. So I don't know how we're supposed to be able to help here." But Superman's not paying any attention. He just walks over to in between the Kents. And I got to read this line here because it's the weirdest line. About Mom Pa Kent. He jokes about his creaky back. She says if he'd stop eating so much pie, then his belly wouldn't put so much strain on it. And then he winks and says something about her pie. Superman should not have to hear that. But regardless, there's an explosion coming in from far away. We see a bunch of parademons are attacking the Kent farm. And the Kents are like, "It's okay, we've got a bunker, we can get down to it. Clark built it for us." But they don't have time to go get to it. So Superman's like, "All right, I'm here. I'm ready to fight." And Batman immediately jumps in. He's just like, "Whoa, hold on. We shouldn't be interfering here. This is the past. It could change everything in the future." And Superman's like, "Well, the demon said we had one chance to affect this world." And it's like, "Yeah, but what if we do it for the worst? What if like this needs to happen? It's a chaos demon, Clark. Think about it." And he's just like, "Tell me you wouldn't do the same for your parents." Yeah, okay, here we go. So he jumps into the fight, but of course, before he's even able to do anything, the Earth 2 Superman, because this is the past, is already zapping parademons and part of the fight. So Superman never actually turns solid throughout this whole thing. And he's just like, "All right, so be it." So Superman of Earth 2 saves the Kents, and Ma Kent's just like, "Look, Clark, thanks, but like you shouldn't have had to come here anyway. You can't just leave the city and like the whole Earth just because your parents are in trouble. Like millions of people need you. Like what about Lois?" And immediately Earth 2 Superman's just like, "Oh God, Lois." So over at the Daily Planet, it's being attacked by parademons. Lois pulls out a freaking huge-ass laser gun assault rifle, and she just keeps on repeating over and over, "He'll be here, he'll be here." And we see Lois, or Superman, the blue blur is just flying across the city, and before we even see it, he gets to the Daily Planet, but it's too late, and Lois has been killed. So that's where New 52 Superman's, or Earth 1 Superman's just like, "Oh no, oh God." So meanwhile, Batman magically teleported because Kaio's just messing with him to Gotham at a different time. And just like, "All right, go ahead, do your thing, save somebody." And he looks across and he sees Alfred being attacked by a parademon. And he's just like, "That's not my Alfred. I don't care about that Alfred. He doesn't matter at all." And Kaio's like, "You sure about that? Because he's still your butler and he still talks like Alfred, looks like Alfred. He's literally everything that your adoptive father you would think about." And Batman's just like, "No, he's not my Alfred. He's not my Alfred. I don't care. I'm not going to get involved here." And then Alfred, just as he's about to be attacked by a parademon, says, "I'm sorry, Bruce." And that's where our Bruce Wayne turns tangible long enough to punch the parademon in the face and knock him out. And Alfred doesn't even he's cowering. He doesn't even register that Batman was there. By the time he turns around, he's already intangible again. And Batman, they're both just looking at Gotham burning. And Batman's like, "Damn you, Kaio. I could have done so much more, but you put me right here next to Alfred, and it's my emotions." So Batman meets back up with Superman, and now they are in the Batcave as the Trinity are discussing their final plan to go and take down Darkseid's army through self-sacrifice and whatnot. And Superman and Batman are there listening. They're intangible, obviously. And Batman's like, "Hey, you're going to have to stay really close to them and pay attention to where you need to be, because you only get a few seconds when you're fully tangible, and you really got to make it count." And Superman's like, "How do you know that?" And he's just like, "I saved Alfred. Okay, yeah, no, I'm weak. I'm human. Sorry." And Superman's like, "I like it when you're human." So we see the Trinity making their vow. They're going to go stop Darkseid. They launch into battle, and they start going at it. Batman tells Superman, "Hey, go stick by the other version of me. He's the only one who's most critical to this plan and also super duper vulnerable." And Superman's like, "Right, totally." So we see the Earth 2 version of Superman and Wonder Woman dying, because of course they did. We see him follow Batman into Darkseid's tower. He plants the bombs and the virus and all that, and he's ready to blow it all up. And Superman has the opportunity to save Batman. He has the opportunity to get him out of the tower and make that the thing that would change this Earth. But he also recognizes that this Earth's Batman's daughter, Helena Wayne, aka Robin, is going to be caught in the explosion of the tower as well, and she will most likely die if he doesn't intervene. So he does what he knows he needs to do. He goes in, he saves Helena from being blown up, and both Helena and Supergirl at that point go through the portal, and they time loop. Everything happened exactly the way it always did before, and Batman's like, well, that's probably the best possible outcome, messing with time. Like, we didn't change anything. Great. And they congratulate each other on doing a good job, but then Kaio pops up being like, you stupid idiots. I gave you a chance. I gave you a chance to actually change things for the better. I thought you guys were ruthless, but you're soft. You're doughy. You're stupid. And because of that, I'm going to send you back home with a clean slate. You aren't going to remember none of this. So, once again, another mind wipe, and whatever happens next issue. So, yeah, there's that. Here's the thing. I peeked ahead. I just flipped the next one, and I see more Kaio. So I guess I'm just a little bit confused as to, like, where the end point of this story is, you know? Because I thought it was at the end of the first arc, and it's like, oh yeah, and then Kaio was bouncing around, and I think Kaio also appeared in Darkseid's, like, Villains Month tie-in. So it's been around, but it's been dealt with. It's finished. And then this issue comes up, and it's like, okay, but we'll give them another chance. But now they have their mind wiped again. So are we done? How long is Kaio going to be just like the driving force of this book of trying to get them intervening with Earth 2? And I don't know, is the long and short of it. I have no idea. But I guess we'll find out. In terms of how good of an issue this was on its own, I like the morality play. I like the fact that they both realize, yeah, no, we could save the world, but we both focus on the individual more, and we're both a little bit selfish that way. So I'm going to go ahead and say this is a flat 7. It's solid. It's an okay issue. It's definitely standalone and completely ignorable, unless Kaio turns out to be a much bigger thing, but we'll get to that. For now, 7. Aquaman and the Others, number 4, written by Dan Jurgens, art by Medina. So last issue, we got introduced to a character named Legend, who is like this ancient dude who had his gold stolen from him and turned into the ancient Atlantean artifacts. And then Yawara went to the Ghost Zone. And also Aquaman was stabbed with his own trident. A lot of stuff. So this picks up with, again, one of the flashbacks that all these issues have. And we get the guy who was trying to avenge his father for having the gold stolen. And he's like, look, I'm dying. I'm like right on death's door. I need you to get the Chamber of the Suns prepared. And he's talking to his daughter, and the daughter's like, no, we can't do that. It'll destroy your soul. And he's just like, I'm like about to die, so let's just get on with it. So, cutting to modern day, Aquaman is down on the ground. He's dead because of the trident, and Legends just like, yeah, well, you know, all I wanted was the trident, but he's an Atlantean, so screw him. I don't really care. Meanwhile, Aaron and Sae are talking, and he's just like, Sae, this was one of your visions, right? And she's just like, yeah, that was. I'm sorry. I always feel guilty whenever one of them comes true, but, like, he's not totally dead yet. Like, he's wearing thick armor, and he's very clearly still grimacing, so maybe we could just stop the bleeding and, like, try to help him until a medic shows up. And so Aaron takes off his shirt. They try to stop the bleeding, and Legend's just like, okay, I mean, this is my place, but yeah, sure, whatever. And they mentioned being able to teleport away with the globe of transportation. And he's like, oh, right, I need that too. So we intercut here with a bunch of Yawara and the Ghost Zone stuff. I'm just going to get to it all later because it doesn't really intervene at all. So we see Prisoner, Man of War, and I always blank on her name. It's Sky, but she has like a different name. Regardless, they're all in a prison cell, and the operative Sorry, it's not Man of War, it's the Operative. Operative is like, all right, well, I've got secret hidden tools that they didn't take away from me. So he opens up his cufflink. He has a bunch of keys in there, and he just gets out of the cell immediately. And the prisoner's just like, well, I mean, even if they took away that suit from you, I bet that you would still have some tool to escape. And he's like, damn right I would. And Sky's like, that's disgusting. Please stop. So we see them leading Aquaman into this room where Legend's just setting down his stuff, which honest to God just feels to me like they want to continue to be part of this story. Like, there's no reason to drag Aquaman in here, but Aquaman's saying, oh, you have to save Sae, don't worry about me. And Sae's like, shut up, Aquaman, we're going to save you, clearly. So the two kids, whatever the hell their names are, not kids, but, the kids of Legend, they're just like, what? Let's kill them. Why are they still alive? Like, the dude's just saying, like, let's kill them. And Legend's like, no, we got to keep them alive so that their friends show up and they bring their magic trinkets and we can use those as well. And then Sae gets another vision, but this one seems to be okay. She's like, oh, of course, I get it now. So we get like 3 straight pages here of Legend just saying, I've got all these artifacts, but they've got these enchantments on them, so I need to melt them down and then turn them into a suit of gold, and that will allow me to live forever, because these suits that I'm wearing, because I was that old dude from long ago, they only last a certain amount of time, and each time I change suits, it like breaks me down a little bit. So if I don't get into the suit of gold this time, I will actually die permanently for real. And this is like, all right, I guess that's what we got to do then. But they need the rest of the trinkets to make it work. So at that point, the girl shows up and she sees Aquaman is like dying on the ground, and she's just like, hey, I thought I wanted that one. Like, I didn't know who killed this one. And Legend's just like, if you thought I would ever let you dick around with an Atlantean, you have nothing coming, girl. I want you to take this stuff and take it to the pool, which is where they will melt it all down. Meanwhile, the boys like, all right, we're going to have visitors soon, so let's double up the guards. But before they can do anything, we have Operative, Prisoner, and Sky come in. And Operative immediately starts fighting. Aaron's in on the fight too. Prisoner walks over to Aquaman and is like, well, I'm not a medic, but one of my ghosts that follows me around is. So he starts doing like field medic stuff on Aquaman, trying to get him sewn up. We see the one dude is using his telekinesis against Aaron. Operative's getting thrown against the wall because Legend's just that freaking strong. And then honestly, is there a final page here? No, actually, never mind. There is. That's literally where it ends. Is that Legend punches through the ghost medic and knocks out Prisoner. And that's it for that story. But then there's the intercutting thing with Yawara. So Yawara's in the Go Zone, and last time she met up with Vostok, who was in there, and what was the name of the other one? I can't remember her name, but Kahina, that's it. And they're both just like, look, we both died suddenly, and that's why we're ghosts, because we had unfinished business. But we both died for, protecting our things from Black Manta. We're cool with it. We're fine with it. But, like, yeah, we're both still stuck here. We have unfinished business. And Kahina's like, yeah, okay, I'm here because of my sister's safety. That's what I need you to do. But Vostok here, he needs you to take his helmet out of the Go Zone and lay it in its proper resting place. And she's like, okay, but, like, should I do that now? Because I think should we care about your sister? She's currently captive. And just like, yeah, no, but like, this is more important. Go lay it down in the resting place. Just follow this like magic road until you get to the end and then use the globe of transportation. She's like, all right, guess I will. Sure, whatever. So she runs down the road. And when she gets to the end, there's this giant portal. And she's like, all right, do I need to leap through the portal? I hate leaps of faith, but all right, I'll do it. So she jumps in. And when she arrives out on the other side, there's a bunch of robots that start shooting at her, and they're all speaking Russian. And so she's like, I swear to God, I am staying in the Amazon from here on. So she attacks the robots, she takes them all out, picks back up the helmet, and she's like, all right, where's this gotta go? Like, why is it so important I do this first? And she presses a button to open up a window, and she is on a Russian moon base. And she's like, oh, right, Vostok spent many years away from us, like, out in space. It makes sense he was up on the moon, like on this Russian thing. Okay, yeah, this is all coming together. So he must have considered this his home, and that's why he wants the helmet laid back down here. All right, I could do that. So she roams through the halls trying to find the proper place to set it, and as she enters a room, all of a sudden the lights come on, and this pod opens up, and out of it comes a humanoid figure, and she's ready to fight, but turns out it's Vostok. I'm betting a clone, a Russian clone. And so Vostok is now alive again, and the helmet's there with him, so he might be just what they need to turn the tide. Yeah, it's fine. It's okay. The Yawara stuff feels like it's moving the story forward. Everything else going on in the background just feels like, okay, we just gotta waste some time while we eventually get Vostok into the fight. Considering that this trade ends literally on the next issue, I don't think it's going to take that long. So I'm going to give this one, I'll give it like a 6. It's not, this was one that I was actually bored reading through. I was just not entertained, and I didn't feel like anything was happening. Add on top of it that Legend's motivations are get the gold because it's mine. I don't know. I'm just not interested by that. It doesn't seem... I'm much more interested in the implications of like, oh, the Atlanteans have had it for like millennia, but like these are the original owners. Which one's technically in the right? Who should it belong to? Let's talk about the morality of this. But like instead we just get whatever. Like I just got the gold now. It doesn't matter. So yeah, 6 for this. I'm just not that into it. Earth 2, number 25, written by Tom Taylor, art by Nicola Scott. Last issue we had Alan Scott and Hawkgirl go to rescue the Flash, and they're attacked by a bunch of parademons. And then we find out that Val, the new Kryptonian, has the Superman crest on his chest, and he's been hiding it this whole time. So we open up in Amazonia, and Commander Khan's like, I'm sorry, Green Lantern and Hawkgirl did what now? And we cut over to them fleeing from a massive horde of parademons. Hawkgirl's carrying Jay, and Alan's just holding back the parademons as best he can, as well as Beguiler, which is the person who was torturing Jay. So he's, Green Lantern's struggling to keep up, but he's doing the best he can. Meanwhile, back on Amazonia, we see Val is in a full Superman costume, and Jimmy Olsen's like, okay, please explain. Are you related to Superman? Just like, I mean, kinda. I was adopted by his parents after my parents were killed for standing up to power and speaking truth to it. And when Krypton exploded, me, Kal-El's cousin, and one other mysterious person were all in the rocket ships that were sent away from Earth. So yeah, that's what happened. And the whole reason I haven't shown up to this point is that Superman kind of made it really bad to show off the Superman symbol, coming back all evil and whatnot. And he says that he can't take it off because it would be a dishonor to Kara and Jor-El. So Jimmy Olsen's like, all right, well, do you think you can stand up to power like your real parents? Because we really need you to do that. So back with Green Lantern, he's holding back Beguiler and the Horde, but it's not enough. Beguiler's able to push through. Green Lantern goes down into the water. And then they come for Jay Garrick. Kendra pulls out a gun and just goes to shoot Beguiler, but she's just like, you misunderestimate me because I've got you right where I want you. And Beguiler's just like, seriously? What could you possibly do? You're in the middle of nowhere. We're just over the ocean. She's like, damn right we are. So at that point, Aquawoman rises up with a giant wave, takes out a bunch of parademons with sharks, and all that's left is just Beguiler. All the parademons are gone. So that's when Alan Scott comes out of the water. He's ready to fight, and he's like, I could take it on now that it's just you. And she's just like, just me? Just me? And she immediately blasts Green Lantern back down into the water. So at that point, Flash grabs hold of her, just being like, no, you know what? I'm not afraid of being hurt anymore because of the torture you put me through, and you're not going to hurt anybody else. So he says how he's always held back whenever he's running with someone else because he doesn't want to hurt him. He doesn't care about that anymore. So he goes into a sonic boom. We see Dr. Fate, in his crazy state, just like boom. And then as he's running through, all of a sudden they go to this bright white place, and both Beguiler and Jay are like, where the hell is this? What's going on? And he's just like, I don't know, but I'm going to keep going. And he just pushes harder and faster until finally she just fades away. And then Flash comes back out, and she's just like, hey, what happened to the Beguiler? And he's like, I don't know. I think I pushed her into, like, infinity. And so they call up Batman, just like, hey, Batman, we took care of the parademons and Beguiler's gone. And Batman's like, what do you mean gone? And Jay just shrugs his shoulders. Like, it's a long story. Look, where's Superman at right now? And it's just like, oh, well, he's having dinner with his parents. So we cut over to the Kent farm where Superman's setting the table. And he's just like, oh, where's Pa? Let me go. He's out in the barn. I'll go take care of him. And Lois, of course, still is Red Tornado. Is just like, Martha, what the hell is going on here? And Martha's like, she can hear us. So we go out to the barn, and Pa's working on the truck, and Clark's just like, it's got some good grub in there. Be ashamed to let it go cold. And he's just like, please, I just don't want to pretend anymore. And just like, pretend what, Pa? And he's just like, nothing, son. And he's just like, all right, cool, awesome. Let's go inside. Let's enjoy a family meal together. So everyone's just eating silently, and Clark's just like, oh, well, no one wants to say anything. It's a little bit awkward here. And Pa's just like, no one wants to say anything. He's like, what's the matter, Pa? He's like, you know damn well what's the problem. And Martha's like, don't do it. And he's just like, no, I'm sick of being afraid. And he stands up to Clark, and he's just like, I'm not going to pretend that you're not a mass-murdering zealot and that you don't have a robot wife here. That's weird in its own right, man. And Superman stands up. He's like, I am a representative of Darkseid, and you better respect that. And Pa Kent says, screw Darkseid, to which Superman Omega Vision heat beams Jonathan Kent, killing him. And immediately, Lois is up and pushing Martha away, saying, you can't be him. You are not Clark. And Clark is, like, immediately super pissed off. He's like, don't say that. I love you. But then all of a sudden he gets a call from whoever the hell, someone in Darkseid's army, saying, like, hey, Kal-El, we need you. We finally did it. We made the gateway ready. Darkseid can come and have this world now. And we see him fly off through the roof. Meanwhile, the Mr. Terrifics, so Terry Sloan and Michael Holt, are activating the beam where Mr. Miracle's also there doing something. And he's just like, all right, we can do it. Let's go ahead, free the beam. And so they open it up. All of a sudden, there's a big boom in the sky, and a giant red portal opens up, threatening to suck the entirety of the Earth into it. And Green Lantern... like, everyone feels something is wrong, but Green Lantern's immediately like, okay, I can feel the Earth saying that's about to be sucked through a giant portal, so I'm going to go try to hold that off as best I can. You guys figure out something else to do here. The Earth is saying that it's being generated from the Large Hadron Collider in Switzerland. So Batman gets that information. He's just like, all right, cool. He injects himself with some drugs. He's like, let's go to Geneva. Sandman, open a portal. So at that point, Dr. Fate approaches Val, and he's like, hey, world's ending. And he puts the helmet onto Val. Val immediately gets a huge rush of perspective, and he takes off the helmet again. He's like, okay, I get it. I'm not going to kill Kal-El, but I am going to fix what he's broken. And he heat visions the helmet of Fate like back into one piece again, and Dr. Fate like collapses because obviously that's a big deal for him. And Jimmy's like, I'm sorry, hold on, you put on his helmet and then you just come out of it and you're ready to join the fight now? And he's like, yeah, I guess so. And he's just like, man, I had a whole speech and everything. I mean, cool, great, awesome. So we see Alan Scott in space trying to pull the Earth back away from the portal. Superman comes up ready to throw fists with him, but before he can do anything, Val Zod's there holding his own fist back, and they're ready to fight. So cool. I'm into it. I enjoy the backstory for Val Zod. I think is okay there, of saying that his parents were killed and all that. I think that works there. I like that this is how they show that this, I mean, it still could be the real Superman, but this is them showing that if this is Superman, he's no longer redeemable. Like killing Jonathan Kent, yeah, no, that's, you've passed the point of no return. Add on to it, the Flash may have just introduced the Speed Force. It feels like a big issue. It feels worthy of the number 25. So I enjoyed it. I think I'm going to give it... I want to give it an 8, but it just feels shy of that. It's ever so less than an 8. I'm still going to do it, though. I'm giving it an 8. But just know it's a very low 8. It feels like there's just like one extra little scene, one tiny little something I was looking for that just didn't happen here. I don't know what it was, but... It's still very, very good in its own right, very worth the read, and obviously a big moment for a lot of characters. So yeah, Earth 2 still going strong. Green Arrow number 33, written by Jeff Lemire, art by Andrea Sorrentino. So last issue, Green Arrow met up with a bunch of like D-grade mercenaries or whatever coming to kill him, and then all of a sudden he was saved by Emiko, who says that she's the new Green Arrow. So this story is told two different time periods. The first flashback period is set during just after the months where Oliver's mother died of cancer, and Diggle, who was on his team, said, hey, you got to get out there and be Green Arrow. In fact, that's where we open up with, is that Oliver's drinking his days away. It's been months since he's been Green Arrow. And Diggle's like, hey, look, you got to get out there. You haven't left the bunker in weeks, like, or haven't been to the bunker in weeks. And he's just like, I'm not ready. My mother died of cancer. What would you know about that? And he's like, well, I mean, my father and my brother both died of cancer. So, like, I get it. It's just that. And he's like, what? What is it? Just what? And he's like, well, I've got a lead. There's this big thing going down. Diaz, he's making moves, and I know where one of his shipments is going to be. We need to go get him. And he's just like, let the cops handle it. He's like, the cops are paid off. You know this. Come on, let's go be Green Arrow. Let's do it. You don't get to walk away until the city's clean. And he's like, why not? Roy walked away. He's like, no, you fired him because of his self-destructive attitude, which look in a mirror, bro. So at that point, Diggle like gets up in his face and says like, now get back to work. The city needs you. And he's just like, no. You don't work with me. You work for me. That's on my terms. He's like, oh, that's how it's going to be? And he's like, yep. And he storms off. And he's like, fine. All right. Well, I've got a job to do. So in modern day, we see Emiko has got an arrow trained on. I'll be honest, I forgot all of their names. Red Dart, Brick. Was Killer Moth in there? I don't know. The rest of them. So we have Emiko is like firing off shots, trying to keep him away. And one of them is just like, whoa, hold on. Richard Dragon said nothing about a sidekick. And both of them are like, he is not a sidekick. There's no sidekicks here. And Oliver's like, why are you back in Seattle? What happened to Shadow? She's like, she was lying to me too. They were all lying to me. You're the only one who didn't lie to me from the beginning. You always told me the truth. So yeah, I'm here for being Green Arrow. And so, one of them is just like, oh, well, maybe we'll get an extra bounty if we add in the kid too. So Oliver pushes Emiko out of the way of like one of their shots, fires off a pyrotechnic arrow, and Emiko's like, when do I get trick arrows? And he's like, never. You never get you never get trick arrows. Let's go. And she's like, oh, well, Green Arrow doesn't run from fights. And it's like, first off, you're not Green Arrow. Second off, stop speaking in the third person. It's stupid. And she's like, fine, whatever. But one day I will be Green Arrow. So they start going away. And Oliver's basically saying, like, look, I'm going to send you back to Europe because you do not belong here. And she's just responding with, like, no, you can't make me go back there. But my mother is crazy. And he's like, okay, well, I agree with you on that. But still, regardless, that's not a thing. And she basically says, I'm heir to the Arrow clan. I've trained with the greatest warriors. I want to be Green Arrow. And Oliver just shuts her down, saying, like, nobody else wears the hood but me. So we cut back to the past again. Oliver's waking up after a bender. He gets out of bed, TV's spouting news about how his father hasn't been seen in months, and neither has he. But then there's a flash bulletin of how Green Arrow was spotted taking down a gang, and that gets Oliver's attention. And they do a little zoom in on the photo that was caught of him, and it's very clearly Diggle. And Oliver's just like, that son of a bitch. Nobody wears that hood but me. So we cut back to modern day, and Miko's just like, you can't tell me what to do. You're not my dad. And he's like, yeah, great. That dude was a murderous psychopath. So as they're arguing with each other, Brick just comes busting through a wall. Emiko gets out of the way, but Oliver gets grabbed. So Emiko then like throws an arrow into Brick's leg, and he's like, you know what? I don't usually hurt kids, but you've sunk 2 arrows into me, so I'm going to go ahead and hurt you. And he picks up Emiko and just shoves her down to the pavement. And Oliver flips his lid. And he kicks a Brick in the face and just tells him, like, you're dead, man. And he starts punching him over and over and over again. You see teeth flying, blood going everywhere. And then finally you get, like, a shot of just Brick's face. And he's like, please stop. So at that point, Emiko manages to come to. She gets out of the hole. And he's just like, oh, Jesus Christ, I thought you were dead. So we go over to Killer Moth. And he's about to fire something. And it turns out that Oliver has a tornado arrow to disperse the gas, whatever it may be. So Oliver kicks him in the face and just like, tell me where's Dragon. Tell me now. Red Dart comes in and is about to shoot Emiko in the head. Just got Emiko in a chokehold. And Emiko's just like, don't negotiate with these psychos, do it. I'm happy to die this way. And Red Dart's just like, Jesus, kid, you're dark. What the hell is going on here? So at that point, Naomi and Henry show up, and they sneak up from behind, knock out Red Dart, and that gives Oliver enough time to seriously interrogate Killer Moth, and just like, all right, I'm going to beat you to a pulp unless you tell me where it is. And he's like, here's his location, but like, I'm telling you, man, it's a fortress. He's like, great, and he knocks him out anyway. So at that point, he tells Naomi, watch over Emiko. You guys stay out of this. I'm going to go deal with this. I'm doing this on my own. And we cut to another flashback where Diggle's getting out of the Arrow costume down in the bunker, and Oliver just kicks his way in. He's just like, how dare you, sir? And immediately Diggle just flips around and just punches him in the face, being like, look who's talking. I could smell the booze before you even came in. Like, you are useless in this job, and I thought we were partners. And he's just like, no, we were never partners. You worked for me. That's how it is, and now you're fired. And so he just gets kicked in the face again. And he's just like, you know what? I know what you are. You're just a rich playboy with some fancy toys. You don't actually care about anybody else. Well, fine. You know what? You finally got what you wanted. You're on your own. So we see Oliver going to the location. It's got some big open windows. And as he makes his way to the building opposite, we see Vertigo is standing in the room with Diggle along with Richard Dragon. And he does his Vertigo ability on Oliver, just disorienting him a little bit. And Diggle's like, hey man, long time no see. So we go over to Naomi, Henry, and Emiko. And they're just basically talking about what the hell they're supposed to do with Emiko. And all of a sudden, Tachman shows up. And he's got a gun trained on the three of them. And he's just like, they're all just like, hey, Tachman, what's up? He's just like, well, I got double-crossed by Richard Dragon, and the only way that he's going to let me live is if I kill you guys. And he's just like, what? Why us? Why are we part of this? This has nothing to do with this. And he's like, nah, he doesn't want just to kill Green Arrow. He wants to hurt him. He wants to kill his entire family. And he knows you guys are working with him, so yeah, he wants you dead. So we cut in between the two pairs. Arrow's telling Dragon to let Diggle go, and Henry's standing in the middle of Tachman and Naomi, and they do the Dark Knight thing where it's like, oh, let him go. Very poor choice of words. So Diggle goes out through the window, seemingly like to his death because there are many stories up, and Henry seemingly gets shot in the stomach by Tachman defending Naomi. So yeah, a lot of big moves here. Do I think Henry's dead? No. I don't think he had a big enough moment yet. I think he needed a little bit more that he was going to do before they sent him on his way. But now he has the ability to say, oh, I defended Naomi, so we could get a little thing going between us. Beyond that, it's a perfectly fine issue, but I do think it spends a bit too long on trying to tie in the flashbacks. I think I would have much rather they just cut to it, because it seems like they spend about like 2 or 3 panels on each of the pages before a flashback getting to the line that is like the bridge. So it's like, oh, I'm doing this on my own. Cut to the flashback of him doing it on his own. So that's just a little bit weak for me. But everything else, art-wise, pacing-wise, it's still fantastic. I love the sequence of Oliver beating up Brick. Fantastically well done, and it really shows his emotion. So overall, I'm going to give this one a solid 8. It's very good, and I honestly, I expect that level from this book, but I'm always happy to get it at the same time. Justice League 3000, number 8, written by Keith Giffen and J.M. DeMatteis, art by Howard Porter. So, last issue, okay, big reveals. Boy Terry, who at this point I will just be calling Terry, is a member of the Five. He killed the Flash, he killed his sister, Girl Terry, and he took the entire Justice League hostage by saying that there were bombs all throughout their bodies, and also he blew up all of Cadmus' world. So we open up with the Justice League, which at this point is Superman, Firestorm, Wonder Woman, Batman, and probably Green Lantern's in there. And then Aerial Masters is in there as well. And they are being marched through Cadmus World, and basically they're being brought into the fold here. And yes, there's Green Lantern. They're basically saying like, oh God, Flash died, how awful. But it's like, yeah, no, totally. But like, the Wonder Twins, they brought him back before, they'll bring him back again. It's just like, no, there are no Wonder Twins anymore. One was dead and one was evil. Like, we can't assume any of that anymore. And at this point, Superman is like kind of starting to grow a little bit of a conscience. He's just like, what kind of person does such a horrible thing? And Wonder Woman tries to like talk to him a little bit, and then all of a sudden she's shoved by one of the guards, who she immediately is just like, oh no, you don't get to do that, and throws him out the window. And she's like, anybody else want to advice me? And this is where Terry steps up, and Terry's like, oh, hey, Wonder Woman, hey, look, here's the thing. Everyone stand down. The Justice League are not our enemies. They are our honored guests. And that's where Ariel steps up being like, honored guests? You put explosives in them. What the hell, man? He's just like, all right, look, I just want a chance to explain things. Just want to talk. I mean, I want you guys to join of your own free will. And Batman's just like, Coeval already tried to get us, and that didn't work. He's like, well, not exactly. And that's where Firestorm sets up saying like, hi, I'm Firestorm. I was never really a member of the Justice League, and yeah, I made a deal. And everyone's like, dude, we're a family. He's like, I don't know you. We're in the future. I don't know anything about this area. I'm all I said was I would make a deal that I would occasionally be a freelance worker for them, and in return I'd do whatever I want to do and discover my own life here in the future. And Terry's like, and I offer that deal up to any of you if you want it. And Firestorm's like, can I go now? And it's like, yeah, go do your job. So he was hired on a job to, there was a rebel armada that was taking over a sector of space or whatever, and Firestorm's just going to go and like launch some nukes, and he's like, yeah, that'll take care of it. Anyway, so Terry's like, all right, so let's keep going. We can talk about this later. Let's move you into your cells. And Ariel steps up, and she's just like, oh, I recognize I shouldn't have run. I shouldn't have done this. This is the world I created. But like, I wanted, if I had stayed, I might have been able to stop the project. And he's just like, yeah, I mean, maybe, probably not though, because regardless, I was always ahead of you. Like, I was always guiding things. So we see Terry and Ariel sitting down to have a talk. And it's just basically one long thing about like their motivations and whatnot. And Terry basically says, hey, I want you to continue working on the cloning thing, but work out all the kinks. Make it a perfect clone instead of this weird, like, half thing we got going on here. And Ariel says, no, it's awful. I'm not going to continue that. And he says, fine, I'm just going to blow up the Justice League then. And then I'll clone some more imperfectly. And I'll blow them up too. And I'll keep doing that over and over again because you have a little thing called a conscience. And she's just like, fine, all right, I'll do it. And he's just like, great, awesome, cool. You are the mother to the new age and to all these heroes. So then we go down to what is apparently the DNA vault, which goes on for God knows how far. And it apparently has 97.6 of the entire superhero community of the 21st century. And we have Lotus and the other one, what's his name? Locus and Convert. That's the one. I'm trying to remember these. They're looking through the things, and Locus is just like, I want the DNA of Hal Jordan. I want to make 7 of them to be my personal harem. And Convert's just like, why? What's your thing with Hal Jordan? He's like, that's my true love. And he's like, that's stupid. And then he just gets his body blown up. But of course, he has multiple bodies, so it doesn't matter. So at that point, Coeval talks to Convert's other body. He's just like, hey, ignore her, let her do her thing. I need your help hacking into the cabinet systems because I've always been like on the periphery. I need to get into the core systems this time. So we see Green Lantern is talking to Batman, and he's done a thing where he's made a construct that is like full human size, and then the real him's just like sitting inside his pocket. So he's talking to Batman, and he's just like, look, here's the thing. I think that there is a way that we should be able to do this. And they get into a long discussion about like how Green Lantern's powers are killing him, blah, blah, blah. Doesn't matter. But point being is that Batman's like, we already gave everything to this world and they brought us back again. We don't know anything else. But Green Lantern's like, yeah, but we're going to do it again anyway, because that's what heroes do. And Batman's like, all right, fine, you're right. So they start talking about a plan about getting out of here. They start talking to Wonder Woman about it later on. And Wonder Woman's just like, there's no way of escape here. And it sounds like she's being a bummer about it, but she's like, no, seriously, like, I have fully thought about escaping here, but like, his goons, Coeval's goons, are watching our every move. They're hearing our every word. And Green Lantern points out, like, that's weird because we've said the word escape like 12 times and nobody's said anything about it. And that's where Wonder Woman's like, did you do something, Green Lantern? And he's just like, maybe. And it turns out Green Lantern now has, oh, by the way, Superman shows up here, but Green Lantern has the ability that he can just think something and it happens. Like, he just had the passing thought of, boy, wouldn't it be great if Coeval couldn't hear us talking about all these things? And it just happened. But Superman's like, nah, that doesn't make any sense, man. Please explain. We need more information here. So he gets into the full nitty-gritty of it, where he thought about it, and then all of a sudden he was in, like, cyberspace, and his ring willed him to where the security feeds were, and he just replaced them with looping footage of them moping about in their cells. And so, yeah, it's foolproof. There's no way they'll ever know. So at that point, they're just like, okay, all right. We'll come with a plan here. We'll see what we can do, and maybe we can just walk out of here. So we see Ariel has gone to the DNA vaults for some reason while working on this cloning thing. Gets stopped by, I believe it's, I'll be honest, I have no idea. It's either Convert or Body of Coeval. I think it's Convert. Regardless, he's just like, I don't like you, Ariel Masters, and I don't trust what you're doing here. And one day, you're going to go too far, and Terry's going to let me kill you, and I will be happy to do that. And Ariel's like, whatever, man. I don't care. So at that point, Batman manages to sneak in and talks to Ariel, and it's like, hey, we've been working on a plan. This is the first time we're able to talk, but like we've got a whole thing going on. And he tells her, like, look, it's safe to talk for like just a little bit here. We've got just enough time away from the robots that we can make this work. But Ariel reveals, it doesn't matter what your plan is. I've already got my own. I've already been doing my own thing. And she reveals that there is no way to fix the cloning process. It's inherently impossible. And Batman's like, but like, that's the whole reason you were hired. So what are you doing? And she's just like, well, I decided I was going to take Girl Terry and I was going to revive her because I think that that's one of the few people who might be safe from like full-on bombing in the way of that before. And Coeval and Boy Terry talk about this, about like, oh, she's planning something, da-da-da. And Boy Terry's like, nah, she'll stay in line. She cares too much about the universe. So we see Girl Terry waking up in her pod or whatever, and Ariel's just like, look, I have literally no time to explain this to you, but you need to go. I've modified your DNA. You need to go into the back room, get your gear on, and come back out here, okay? Because we need to get out of here now. And she's like, what? But how did I die? What happened? You were off planet. And she's like, don't worry about it. Get your gear on. So Terry goes in back, and Batman's like, this is a really, really bad plan. And Ariel's like, you've got to trust me on this. I have to live with the choice of the things that I've done, but like, I know that this is one of the ways that I can spare more innocent people. And coming out from the back, wearing her gear, running super fast, is Girl Terry, who is now the new Flash. First, like, half of this issue is totally skippable. As much as there is a back and forth of like, ooh, look how evil Boy Terry is. It's just recap. It's just reassembling. Here's where everybody is. Here's all the stuff for people just joining us. So yeah, first half of this, pretty skippable overall. Honestly, the only major thing that happens is Green Lantern has some new wish-granting ability of his own, whatever that comes from, and Girl Terry is now the Flash. So that probably could have been a little bit faster than recapping the whole issue, but hey, I wanted you to know specifically what was happening. All that said, I'm only going to give this one like a 6. It just didn't impress me that much. It wasn't a bad issue by any means, but like I said before, that when the Wonder Twins were talking and they kept going back to like, innocent people had to die for this project, I was getting tired of it. And then they stopped it because one of the twins died. But now Ariel has taken up the reins of innocent people though, and I just... Stop. Please. I'm over with it. Just don't do that anymore. That's my only chief complaint. And that's why you're at a 6. Phantom Stranger number 21, written by J.M. DeMatteis, art by Fernando Blanco. So last issue, they beat Sin Eater, and Phantom Stranger took Sin Eater somewhere. We'll see very soon. And also, Zoriel the Angel died. while in the hands of Terrence 13. So we open up in Long Island and we go to the house of Chris Esperanza, I believe his name was. And we see him talking to his family, and they're just like, oh, did you do your homework or whatnot? He's like, yeah, I'm working on this paper. It's a big part of my grade. I'll be upstairs. Don't worry about it. And as he goes into his room, we see him start to glow. And inside the room is Phantom Stranger holding the human body of Sin Eater. And Chris turns into the form of God's mercy. He is the vessel for compassion. And that all happened during Forever Evil Blight. I will not recap it, but it was there. So Phantom Stranger brings forward Sin Eater. He's just like, hey, your redemption, this dude, pretty evil. So I'd like redemption, please. And he's like, yeah, no, cool, awesome. Let's go talk somewhere else. And they're like, what about your family? He's like, God's redemption is everywhere. I just make a fake clone of myself, and it just hangs out here. No worries. So they go elsewhere, and it turns out this giant crystal palace in like a void that's called the Temple of Absolution. And this is where Chris does all of his stuff. And so he takes the body of Sin Eater, and he's like, hey, you have brought your greatest enemy here after you spared his life in order for him to be redeemed. That sounds pretty good. You're probably really far down the path of redemption, Phantom Stranger, and one day your journey may come to an end, but not quite yet. So this is just me and him going in there. Bye. So they fly in, and Phantom Stranger's like, all right, fair enough. Yeah, betraying Christ, kind of big deal. So he flies back to New York City, and as he lands back in Terrence 13's penthouse, he sees that there is not only a dead Zoriel in bed, but also like 4 other angels just standing around him. But they don't look like heavenly angels. They look like normal people with big-ass hawk wings. And just like, what in God's name is going on? And he's like, actually, God's name isn't really appropriate because we're all fallen angels. And Zoriel's dead. And Phantom Stranger's like, how can an angel die? Just like, oh, well, we've all died. So he explains it ever so slightly here of the way of heaven is strange and whatnot. Death was Zoriel's choice, but now we have to do our duty. And they all teleport out, and they are in the salt flats of Utah. And turns out that this is a place that the home of the fallen angels called Empirea, and they're about to give him a funeral. So we get a little bit of like an explanation. A bunch of other people show up, a bunch of other fallen angels here. And the main ones that we know are Dayu and Baal. And it's spread over multiple pages, but I'm just going to give as like blank as I can here. So all of the fallen angels that are here were not like angry at God, but they just wanted to deal with humanity more directly. And, some of the angels are more cursed. They align more with darkness, but these guys are closer to the light. So Zoriel was something different, but they need to do this funeral in order to see like where he's going to come down, because this isn't his end. This isn't the end of his story. This is just the end of him being like one of God's angels. So they put him on a crematory pyre and they set him on fire. And Phantom Stranger is like, I barely knew Zoriel, but like I'm still really sad that he died. I don't know why that is. It's super weird. So they set him on fire, and they're just like, okay, so look, there's work to do. Zoriel's future is at stake, and they explain to him like what needed to happen. So turns out that Zoriel helping out during Forever Evil Blight was not part of God's plan. Zoriel was not supposed to do that, but he disobeyed because of how much he cared about Phantom Stranger. And that's Dayu explaining that, and he's just like, what in the hell are you talking about? So she continues saying, like, long story short, Zoriel was your guardian angel. Way back when you were Judas Iscariot, he walked with you all the time. He listened to you. He grieved when you killed yourself after killing Jesus. He was there by your side when you were being judged by the Council of Eternity. He followed you throughout the ages, throughout all of your burdens, and he knows your suffering. He was there when you became Philip Stark and you started a family life. He has always been following you, knowing your feelings, and always being there. He truly cares about you. And after all those centuries, the normally dispassionate angels can sometimes do something brash if it means, the person that they care for. So they land back in the desert, and it's just like, okay, so that's the thing. He's dead, but someone can fight for his soul. And it has to be a human. It doesn't have to be the person he was following, but a human has to fight for his soul and like return the love that and compassion that he gave into the world. And Phantom Stranger's just like, I never asked to be part of this. I never want to do this at all. Bye. And he just leaves. And all that's left there is Terrence 13. And he's like, I mean, just has to be any human, right? I mean, I'll do it. I nearly died once, and then I was saved. I think someone as cool as Zoriel deserves another chance at life. So yeah, I'll be the champion. And then all of a sudden, all of the good angels are replaced with the bad ones. And we say, yep, we are the cursed. We represent all of the bad feelings. And the name of the game is you have to try to keep away from us. You can't let us get you, because if we get you, then Zoriel will be cursed forever. So we are all of your inner terrors and shameful desires and blah, blah, blah. And Terrence is just bolting it across the desert. He's running as fast as he can. But of course, he can't outrun it. He's just a human. So all the cursed angels come and they catch up. They start like ripping at him, scratching him, stuff like that, causing him to bleed. Terrence does manage to pick up a rock and like starts bashing a few of them, but it barely does anything. And he's just like, look, I don't know if I deserve to live. I don't know if I deserve that second chance, but Zoriel certainly does. And in that moment, we see a bunch of the cursed all take Terrence's face as they're about to like strike him down for the final blow. But of course, that's the moment where a huge blinding flash of light, Phantom Stranger is returned, and he's like, look, sorry, Terrence, I abandoned you. I won't do it again. I swear upon our friendship, I'm here for good. And he keeps on attacking the cursed as they approach until finally all of them finally fall. And he says, like, look, I didn't leave because I don't like Zoriel. Zoriel's awesome. He's a cool dude. But, like, I left because I'm a proud dude regardless. And I don't like the fact that somebody was there, like, giving me pity and, like, knows all of my thoughts and feelings throughout all of those centuries. That makes me feel really exposed. And I didn't know how to deal with that because genuinely Zoriel loved me in some compassion. And I just don't know how to return that. So at that point, Ball and Dayu show back up, just being like, hey, yeah, you guys did pretty good, but that wasn't like the whole of it. And it's just like, all right, whatever, bring it on. We'll fight armies of these cursed things, like no problem. And then all the four of them hear this booming voice from above in a very familiar font. And it turns out that the one that they must face is the one. Phantom Stranger has to fight God. Look, this gets canceled next issue. There's a Futures End tie-in, but like this gets canceled next issue. I am so glad they managed to turn around a way to get Phantom Stranger to actually fight God. That is such a good ending. And it's not the little dog version either. Like his form in this is a giant tornado. So I'm down with that. I think this is fun. It's a little bit convoluted somewhere in the middle there, mainly the part where it's saying like, oh, the different types of angels and whatnot. But I'm just going to chalk that up to, they just found out they were getting canceled. They had to throw this in quick. I'm fine with that. All in all, I like the idea that Zoriel was a guardian angel, and that's the reason he joined in. I don't know how much of this was planned in advance, but it all seems to fit together pretty naturally. So I'm going to give this one, I'll give it an 8. I really enjoy this one, and I think it's probably going to end on a pretty strong foot here. Not counting the Futures End tie-in, because I don't know how that's going to go, but main series-wise, should be pretty good as an ending, so we'll see if it manages to stick it next month. Swamp Thing number 33, written by Charles Soule, art by Javier Piña. So last issue, it was an Aquaman tie-in, but the big ending to it was Lady Weeds just basically says, screw you, Alec Holland, and stabs Swamp Thing through the head with a knife, which obviously does nothing. But it informs the opening here, which is Swamp Thing is tied up Lady Weeds in vines and is just dangling her over the edge of a swamp. Just being like, is this what you want? You want me to drown you? You want me to send you back to the green? Is that what you want? Huh? I've given you every chance of life here, and this is how you repay me? Is my job not hard enough for you? And I love the inner narration. It's just like, all right, look, she's got a right to be upset, and you're screaming at her, and he tries to, like, say, he's just like, oh, she's, you know what, she's a monster. Yeah, screw it, she probably deserves this. So, at that point, Wolf steps in, just being like, now, look, we know you're not a murderer, and this would be murder. Don't, like, you dismantled the green. it would be murder if you killed her. So, like, let's go ahead and just set her down and all that. And look, we know she's hard to deal with, but she's going through a tough time adjusting to this new life. But me and Brother Jonah, we will definitely help her. Isn't that right, Brother Jonah? Jonah's like, I don't really see what's so hard about the human life. I'm kind of digging it, but yeah, I guess I'll help. And Wolf's like, see, he'll help. Let her down. And so Swamp Thing's like, all right, look, I am not going to make this decision for you. If you want to leave, by all rights, I will let you go. But what's it going to be? And he undoes the vines. He's like, yes, I'll stay. He's like, great, awesome. So he basically says like, there, okay. Now, Alec, while we're talking about this, maybe I should just point in, when was the last time you checked in with like the remnants of the green? Have you like checked in recently? And he's like, no, I guess I haven't. Let me do that. So he steps into a nearby swamp, and then immediately he feels the green is just screaming out in all directions. He's like, Jesus Christ, I must have been ignoring it for like way too long. This has been like months of setup. How have I missed this? So Swamp Thing crafts a tiny little like 4-year-old looking Swamp Thing. And he just sets it down in the bio. He's like, okay, little one, I've made you. You're a part of me. And your entire point is to be connected to the green at all times and relay that info back to me. Okay, cool? All right. All of you stay in the house. I'm going to go deal with the green. And Lady Weeds is like, yeah, sure we will. I was like, no, seriously, we will talk about your life outside this house after that. But for now, just stay in the house. So he fades away, and then Lady Weeds talks to Wolf and just being like, okay, I pissed him off like you wanted me to, but like, what was that about? Like, you said that like we would be able to get him out of the Avatar body, put me into his body, and then I would position you as the one like sole member of the Parliament of Trees. We'd both get what we want. But you're not living up to your end of the bargain. And Wolf is like, oh, ho, ho. Swamp Thing is like one of the most powerful beings in existence. You think it's easy to bring down his downfall? No. This takes time and patience, and I have built up this scheme, and I promise you we are working through it. And at this point, Capuchin shows back up along with the actual real member of the Serene. And she gives a big hug to Brother Jonah, and Lady Weeds is like, God, I would give anything just to be able to get away from Capuchin. I wouldn't even care if I go back to the green, but like, just the way that like Jonah's fallen for her so completely. It's so gross, the fact that she's so devoted, like, ugh, screw her. And Wolf is just like, well, you know what? She may actually be a problem later on, so I'm going to give you something that can deal with her. And he presents her with like a vial and says, this will give you an super immense power, something that will be able to take her out. But it will make it so you can't blend in anymore around the human world. So last resorts only, okay? And he's like, fine, whatever. So then we get the breakdown to exactly how Wolf has been planning this. And we see it's been ever since the very first night they got here. While everyone else at Mardi Gras, he snuck away and he managed to kill some woman. And I'll be honest, I have no idea why he killed the woman, but he says, I think it was just to steal her phone. And so he stole the phone and set up the fake Serene thing. Then he went over to the lawyer's office and started like getting money and stuff like that so that he could set up all the other extra stuff. He's hired mystics to make the Kruisblutlers, the primordial green like entities, the one he fought in Aquaman, to mess with Alec, and he's just gonna keep on doing this. And he's hired people to like basically do Captain Planet skits where he's just dumping toxic waste into rivers and setting fire to forests and whatnot. And it's all just to keep Alec impossibly stressed out with how far the green has been stretched. And because Alec has to stay in contact with the green at all times now, he's going to be feeling this. He's going to know like exactly how much it's screaming out, and he's going to be kept very busy in that way. So while he's explaining it real quick, we cut over to Capuchin seeing the new little mini swamp thing that's keeping an eye on the green, and Jonah introduces it, and she's just like, that's just gross. That's a weird looking, I don't like that. I don't like that at all. And the Serene guy's just like, oh, well, all the avatars are different. Well, one of them, like 400 years ago, was a pirate, so that was weird. But Jonah then starts talking to Capuchin, and basically is just saying, like, yeah, you know, I lived 1,000 years ago, but like I'm happy to have this new life. I don't understand what Lady Weaves is so upset about. And he starts talking to Capuchin about like all the cool things that they can do now. And then Capuchin's like, by the way, I'm kind of at the end of my life. I've only got like a little bit left in me. I can feel it deep inside. And Jonah's just like, well, let's not focus on how much time, we don't have left. Let's focus on how much we do. So Lady Weeds continues to get more of the story from Wolf, just being like, okay, well, so what? You're just going to exhaust Swamp Thing, and that's going to force him to give the power back? That doesn't seem like it's going to make any sense. He's like, no. I'm not going to wear him out. I'm going to wear him down. I'm going to keep him so stressed out about all the different bits of the green that he needs to chase down. But then also, I've hired this monster force, like a demon thing that has locked onto him, and no matter where he pops up on Earth, they can find him, and they will attack him relentlessly until they finally end up killing him. And we see one of those monsters is attacking now. It drops Alec off a cliff. Alec manages to, he splurts down at the body, but then he sends some vines up, grabs hold of the monster, and just swings it into the side of the cliff. And he's just like, no, look, I know he's not going to be bested by any single attack, but that's why it's going to keep on coming. No matter where he pops up, there's going to be monsters waiting there to attack. And Lady Weeds is like, okay, so he'll just hide out in the green then. He's not going to come out physically. He's just like, no. That's the thing about Alec Holland. He cares way too much about the Earth. He's constantly going to keep popping up. He's never going to let himself just hide out in the green. So he's going to keep on getting attacked again and again and again. And all he has to do is lose once. All he has to do is just lose one time. And that'll be enough. We will be able to take care of Swamp Thing. And then all of a sudden the room fills up with this gas as Wolf is talking. He's just like, speak of the devil, here he is. And this creature appears in front, and Wolf is just like, all right, tell me, how is besting Swamp Thing going? And the beast steps up and he drops a little bag in front of Wolf. And Wolf's like, what's that? He's like, that's your deposit back. We can't kill Swamp Thing. He's too powerful and he's killing all of our guys. We quit. So, yeah, Swamp Thing victorious. So later on, we see Wolf is just like, I mean, I could have a good life here. I could be good as a human. I got money. I got power. But I just really don't want to do this again. I mean, you have the power of the green. There's no human equivalent to that. You can't get that back. And Lady Weeds is like, you're a failure, Wolf. You're nothing more than that. And you know what? I think I can make something useful that you get. And she pulls out the vial that Wolf gave earlier, injects it into his neck, and says, this is my turn now. So we get one final little sequence here. Capuchin and Brother Jonah slept together, and they're both like, wow, it's been so long. And she's like, yeah, it's been a couple 100 years for me. And he's like, it's been 800 years for me. Can you stop that? And she's like, nope. So at that point, they hear a thump upstairs, and Capuchin says, I'll go check it out. And he's like, no. Just in case they're doing something unholy, let me go and spare you that. And she's like, thank you. So he goes upstairs. He sees Wolf down on the floor, or something down on the floor, I should say. We don't actually see what it is. But then all of a sudden, he's looking up. He says, oh, dear God. And then he gets his stomach just ripped out of him. And as he's bleeding out on the ground, he looks up at this huge demonic figure and just says, what have you done? So, sounds like a bad time. I like it. I really like this idea. We already knew Wolf was evil. We saw that he was the one behind the fake Serene thing earlier. So this isn't like a shock, but I like how it's all been planned. We went back to the beginning and we show all these things happening in the green, like they aren't normal things happening. And it makes sense that they're all just happening. Like all these things that Alec had no knowledge of. It makes sense that they're all happening now because someone is causing them. They aren't just random things that all happen to be happening now. They were all intentional. I appreciate that. Add on the fact that we finally get the capper to the Capuchin Jonah thing, and then Jonah gets killed. He was a likable dude. It's building up nicely. I've got a good sense of this. The Swamp Thing victorious pose where he's just standing over the bodies of demons, fantastic splash page. All in all, fantastic issue. I'm going to give this one an 8.5. I think it does a great job of just turning the story and saying, you know what, here's where we're at now. And Lady Weeds is definitely the villain that we expected her to be. So, yeah, I am enjoying it, and I'm looking forward to the next one. Batman Eternal number 13, written by Snyder, Tynion, Fawkes, Layman, and Seeley, art by Mikel, Janin. So, last issue ended with James Gordon Jr. showing up in the prison in Blackgate to meet with his father. This issue picks up same exact place. And Junior's basically saying, Dad, one time you called Blackgate hell on earth, but like a necessary hell. And all the papers ran with it for a while. And, you know, you basically never did anything to stop this place from existing. So it's all your fault that, like, you're in here now and it's so terrible. And he's like, I never supported what this place became. And Junior's like, yeah, well, you didn't do anything to care about it either. So basically, he basically says, Dad, it's all right. I want you to tell me the truth. That, like, you hate this city, right? That's the whole reason all this is going on. That's the whole reason that you fired off that shot that allowed so many people to get killed. It's because deep down, you truly and utterly hate what this city has done, not only to you, but to your family as well. Am I right? Is that what this is? And he's just like, no, that's not at all what it is. And he's just like, yeah, okay, but you're not sure about that, right? So here's the thing. Here's the whole reason why I snuck into Blackgate. I snuck out of Belle Reve. I managed to, like, bribe some guards. All of that stuff was just in here because one day I knew that, like, you would unveil your own inner truth, and now I think you're finally ready. And Jim Gordon's like, ready for what? So we cut over to GCPD, and Bard is putting forward his plan to capture Batman to Forbes. And he's basically saying, look, ever since Batman Incorporated's gone down, they must be stockpiling guns somewhere. We think we've found his munitions place. We're going to go ahead and hit it up, and that'll take out Batman's entire armory, basically. And Forbes is like, that's freaking awesome, dude. Bard, you are the coolest dude ever. Take whoever you want for your team. Go ahead and do it. Make it happen tonight. And he's like, yep, absolutely. And by the way, I thought of another way that we could make the most out of this. And we cut over to the Gotham Gazette where Vicky Vale is talking to her editor, basically saying, like, hey, I want to go on a police ride-along tonight. And the editor's just like, aren't you on the Gordon trial thing? And she's like, yeah, but we're not getting nearly as many views as, like, Daily Planet or whatever. This could be huge. If they manage to take down Batman tonight, yeah, let's do it. Let's go in there. And he's just like, all right, you know what, fine. I know you're up to something. I can see it in your eyes. But, like, if you've got a story that's going to be able to let me rub this in Perry White's face, by all means, go for it. Get out there. But if you bring me back garbage, you're going to be out of here before the end of the week. And as Vicky's leaving the office, the new intern, Joey, steps in being like, hey, we were paying attention to the forums, the local social media posts and stuff. And usually it's just like, how gross the city is, but there's someone on the board saying about how Cluemaster's going to take over the city, and Vicky's like, Cluemaster is going to take over the... Yeah, okay, good luck with that. I'm not running that piece. I'm doing something else. Bye-bye. So then we cut over to Steph, who obviously is the one posting all that stuff, and she's like, God, no one's taking me seriously because my dad is a crappy supervillain. Oh, this is the worst. So we see that she gets an instant message from her friend named Beth, and she's saying how she's not picking up her phone. But then her friend Beth is like, no, seriously, I just need to talk to you. Something weird just showed up in my house. So she goes over to the library phone, calls from there, and Beth is like, hey, yeah, I got a package addressed to you to my house. It's an orange box wrapped in blue wrapping paper, and Steph is immediately like, do not open that box. I am dead serious, don't open it. And she's just like, oh, well, now I gotta know what's in the box. So she pops it open, and inside is a little, like, rocking horse image, but there's 2 clocks ticking down, and Steph is like, it's a clue. I don't know what it is. Get rid of it. And as soon as she hears the ticking thing, she's just like, get rid of it. Get out of there now. Get away. But it's too late. Beth's house just freaking explodes, and Steph just runs out the door as fast as she can. So Jim is still talking to James, and they apparently said whatever was happening off screen, but he basically is saying, like, no, I'm not going to consider it for a minute. And James is like, no, you considered it for a minute already. Because, like, I heard you after those long nights at work when you were drunk on a bottle of whiskey, how much you said you hated this city and how much everything you were doing was hopeless. And James is like, I was drunk. You're turning my frustrations into a motive. That's not at all what's happening. And he's like, yeah, but you're smarter than this. So here's exactly what's going to happen. 2:46 a.m. Tomorrow morning, you're going to find your cell door open, and you're going to be able to walk straight out of Blackgate. I have bribed all the guards. No one's going to stop you. And Jim is like, you're telling me to go against everything I ever stood for. And James just tells him, like, no, I'm not. I'm telling you to admit that you never really stood for anything. Bye, Dad. So we cut over to Batman, who's swinging through the city, and we see some GCPD cops looking around. There's like, oh, we have visual confirmation on Batman. He going into the suspected building. Let's go. And we see all these cops rushing in, and Bullock's there, and he's like, oh, I hope you're ready for this, Bard. I hope you know what you're doing. So they all run in, and as they get inside to multiple different places here, they find all these different groups of Falcone's men, and they're all held at gunpoint. Police, drop your weapons. And then all the other cops who aren't in on the plan are just like, wait a minute, hold on. These don't look like bat people. They've got Falcone's like tattoos on their arms, the rose and stuff. And Bard's just like, what are you talking about? That looks like a bat to me. And the other cops are like, all right, yes, sir. So they start arresting guys. One of the guys gets on his phone before he's arrested. He's like, Falcone, I thought you said the police were on our side. He's like, yeah, they are. It's like, tell that to the guy who's arresting me. And Vicky Vale manages to hear all that. So she's like, oh, yeah, that's a story worth printing, all right. So Bard gets on the phone, says, Falcone, it's over. City doesn't belong to you. And all of his guys are walked out in cuffs. Meanwhile, Bard stays behind. Batman emerges from the shadows, and he's like, you know, you just made a very dangerous enemy in Falcone. He's just like, yeah, well, if you can handle him, I think so can I. And Batman admits that he is impressed with Bard's plan. And he's like, all right, well, it's not over yet. So we go back to the GCPD, and all these guys are getting booked. And that's when Forbes comes out, and he's like, what in the hell are you doing, Bard? And he's like, what do you mean? I arrested all these guys on suspicion of being accomplices to Batman. And it's like, do they look like Robin? No. None of them. They're all grown men with like tattoos and stuff. Let them all go. And he's like, let them go, sir. They had illicit firearms and carrying narcotics. And Forbes just doubled down, saying, I don't care. And that's where Vicky Vale comes back in, saying, I'm sorry, did you just say you wanted to let these violent criminals back out on the street? I'm going to go ahead and quote that anyway, but would you like to add on to that? And Forbes immediately has to backpedal, just being like, well, no, you misunderstood. That's not at all what I meant. So Bard's like, so I should continue processing them is what you're saying? And Forbes is like, yes, you should. So then we take a little side detour. If you remember, Harper Row was trying to look into who Red Robin was, or at least more about him. She breaks into the Robin's Nest, which I don't even know where that is, but regardless, she breaks in. And as she's looking around at like the supercomputer in there, Red Robin comes back. He flips on the computer saying, hey, nanobots, I think that an ex-super scientist and one of Batman's mentors named Sergei Alexandrov might be behind it. Supercomputer, where is he last located? And the supercomputer says Tokyo, and he's like, awesome, let's go. By the way, when I get back from Tokyo, put out a little search thing for Harper Row. I want to have a talk to her about boundaries. So he doesn't know she's in there. But regardless, we then see the last thing for James Gordon. And Junior's basically like, all right, well, I'll see you tomorrow, Dad. And he's like, oh, you're so sure I'm just going to come out there? And he's like, yeah, I am. So then we cut over to Falcone chewing out Bard, just saying like, I swear to God, I'd put you in this position of power, or not Bard, Forbes. I put you in this position of power, I can take it away. You better get this all fixed now. And Forbes is like, right away, sir, definitely, I'll do whatever it takes. But of course, Bard and Vicky are both listening in on the call. They've got it tapped, and Bard's like, when can you send this to the paper? And she's like, I've already done it. So final page we get is Steph has made her way over to Beth's house. It's still engulfed in flames. She's crying. And we see that Clue Master and his buddies are all watching on a surveillance tape. And they're like, why aren't you killing her now? Like, we could easily just do it now. And he's like, this is so much easier. We're going to make her come right to us. So, yeah, Clue Master's got a plan. I like this one. Not just because it's Mikel Janin art. And Mikel Janin art is fantastic. But also because it's a solid plan by Bard. I like the way that they played it out, and it's got some good points to it. Add on top of it a few other things with like the Steph stuff, and I'll admit I'm not so big on the Red Robin Harper stuff, but there's potential there. All of it's just playing nicely. So I'm going to give this one solid 8 out of 10. Really enjoying this series, and I mean, we're not even issue 13 out of 52. We're a quarter of the way through. So we'll see if we can keep this speed up for 39 more issues. Future's End number 9, written by Azzarello, Lemire, Jurgens, and Giffen, art by Patrick Zircher. So this issue opens up over the Indian Ocean. Lois has contracted a pilot to go to the coordinates that were on the piece of paper that she got. And as they arrive at the coordinates, There's nothing. They can't see anything. And Lois is like, that doesn't make any sense. I know there must be something. Circle around a few times. And he's like, nah, man, we're out in the middle of the Indian. We're going to be out on fumes anyway, so we got to get back there. And we see as they're flying away that there's some sort of weird camouflage, stealth mode, whatever, to this giant island that they're over top of. So down on Cadmus Island, we have Grifter talking to Deathstroke and 50 Sue. And basically, Deathstroke is saying, like, all right, look, do you know what you're doing here? Do you have any idea what's going on? And he's like, no, nobody's told me anything except for don't piss off 50 Sue. She's like, and you're failing miserably. So at that point, Deathstroke's like, all right, look, I'm gonna give you the whole lowdown. I'm gonna tell you everything about why you're here, and we'll go ahead and do it. And they basically say, look, your power is useful to us. And he's like, what? I'm able to see aliens. And he's like, no, you have so much more to your power set than that. And Deathstroke explains that based off of what Mr. Faraday was saying, Grifter's power is evolving, but it's evolving to a final state of being able to detect deception. That is what his final thing is. And Grifter's like, okay, so what would that do for you? And he's like, oh, well, that would basically eliminate the guesswork, because kind of our whole thing here on Cadmus Island is doing things that involve seeing through deception. So he says, yeah, usually we go out and kill people, but we also hunt down people as well, but specifically metahumans. And we think that your power set will allow you to see metahumans even when they aren't known as metahumans, because we're interested in all of them, regardless of how great their powers are. We want all the metahumans. So at that point, he's basically saying, like, okay, so I'm a bloodhound. You want me to sniff out the metahumans and point them out? And he's just like, yeah, I mean, kind of. But you also understand you have no choice in the matter, right? And as they are talking, they're walking and they're going down into this deeper facility. And finally, they arrive at the final thing, which is a prison. It is a holding cells, and it's full of metahumans, but specifically ones we recognize from Earth 2. It is all these Earth 2 superhumans, both good and bad, and they're all being watched over by Omax. And he's just like, yep, this is what we do. These are all Earth 2 superhumans, and we're starting, like, he's putting it together. And Grifter's like, okay, I guess I'm in. So we then go over to the MAW, aka the Metropolis Armory Ward, which is apparently just the worst prison, like, ever. So we see Madison from, the other earlier chapters, is there talking to her dad, who was the one who was a traitor to Earth 1 and was selling secrets to the enemy. And she's basically there being like, Dad, I need to ask you about your time when you conspired with them. Did they, they give you secrets? Did they trust you with that sort of stuff? And he's just like, Madison, I thought you didn't want anything to do with me. Your mother's strung out on pills because of me. Like, why? What are you even doing here? And she's like, okay, but like, did you know anything about the deaths of the Teen Titans? And then before anything else can happen, another villain in there shouts, now. And then the window between the two of them just gets smashed. And we see it's this giant character named Rampage who grabs another character named Ethan, I think it's Ethan Boyer. I don't know who the kid is, but regardless, he's in the super jail as well. He's like, you're coming with me, Ethan. And she's just like, awesome, cool. So Rampage is pumping out guards, eventually ends up hitting Madison, which freaks out her dad, but that's what summons Superman to the crime scene. So Superman comes in, punches Rampage. Rampage tries punching back, but like, it's Superman. It's not going to be able to stand up. So that's where Ethan's like, hold on, you got to think for a minute. You have to distract him and get him to care about the like goody two-shoes. So Rampage grabs hold of Madison and throws her up through the holes in the roofs that Superman made. So she just goes like out into space pretty much. Superman goes up, grabs her, and she's like, oh my God, thank you. And Superman looks down and sees that they're already gone. And he's like, why would anybody care about a sicko like Ethan? So then we go over to Terrifitech. And we see that Mikel is got the body of the future cyborg version of Plastique. And he's like, this is straight up Terminator 2 stuff. Like, this is tech that shouldn't even exist yet. I don't know what's going on here. But, like, it's crazy that it's actually here. And he's talking to, I'll be just straight up with it, it's Brother Eye. I have no idea if it's supposed to be Brother Eye, but it's speaking with Brother Eye font, and it's clearly a red glowing eye. So he's basically saying like, oh, what's going on, Mikel? Why are you so perturbed? And he's like, this technology is like if I'm the smartest man on earth, I have no idea where this technology came from. Like, this is so much beyond what we've got. This could be like the cure for cancer and stuff, and this just dropped out of some homeless dude's shopping cart. Like, that doesn't make any sense at all here. So Brother Eye puts forward, like, oh, maybe it's from the other Earth. Maybe it's that. And he's like, nah, I spent time on that Earth. I would have known about it. I don't know what this is about. And the Brother Eye is basically like, oh, well, I can't help you. I'm only in contact with you to observe. And he's like, yeah, I know. So actually, I don't think it's Brother Eye because he actually uses the letter I instead of EYE. And that's kind of a dead giveaway. So then we go back outside the Wounded Duck bar. And we see that Plastique and all the other villains that are talking about breaking into Terrifitech are currently in there trying to have a little chat. And Batman Beyond, Terry McGinnis, is standing rooftop opposite, and he's talking to Alfred, just recapping exactly what they're doing. They want to get back in time in order to stop Brother Eye from happening. But what actually happened was, now that they are too late, at some point between the War with Earth 2 and this point now, the satellites for Brother Eye got shut down. And nobody in the future knew about that because Brother Eye erased it from history. But Brother Eye was not active here, which means that there is a way to stop Brother Eye by making sure that the satellites never get turned back on. So that's his goal right now, and they figure their best way to do it is to get into Terrifitech and stop the satellites, like just basically take them out. So he's like, yeah, well, we couldn't break into Terrifitech on our own, but now we know there are other people who are interested in breaking in. So let's go make a team. So he goes into the Wounded Duck and is ready to start talking to them. Meanwhile, out in space, Frankenstein's getting Hawkman's arm attached to his severed stump, because why not? And Dr. Palmer's like, you really got a fascinating body, Frankenstein. I have no idea how any of this works, but like, I would love to do more research on it once we get back home. And then meanwhile, Amethyst is standing off to the side, and she sees that Hawkman starts stirring. And all of a sudden, he's up and he's at not Captain Adam, at Ray Palmer's throat. And he's like, oh, what the hell did you do to my arm? And he's like, I swear to God, I thought you were dead, man. I promise you this was not intentional. And he's like, yeah, no, I've got nth metal blood in my, like, it's, I don't even know if I'm possible or able to die. It's weird. And he's like, nth metal, what is that? And he's like, look, it's a long story, but like, I don't even remember why I'm here. What's going on? And he looks around, he sees the rest of Stormwatch is dead, and he's like, oh my God. All I remember is that something pulled us out of the bleed, and then Apollo went outside and he just got vaporized. And everyone is standing around like, Apollo got vaporized? Dude, he's as strong as Superman. What in the hell vaporized Apollo? And he's like, I don't know, but whatever it is, it's still out there. So we see that back at Shade HQ, they are able to see what is going on here. And apparently none of Frankenstein's crew think that should be possible. They think that's totally private right now. But Shade's just like, yeah, well, whatever. Regardless, we need to neutralize whatever it is that caused that before it'll be the end of everything. So that's it. That's the issue. Didn't really end on a bang. I think structurally it may have been better to end on the Batman Beyond thing rather than the Frankenstein thing. But, end of everything does feel like it has gravitas. It just doesn't feel like the main story, It's like cutting to the C plot and saying, tune in next time. Is okay, but how about the Batman Beyond stuff? That's the big boy on the cover. Beyond that, it's an okay issue. I think that getting the explanation for a bit more of Cadmus Island is very helpful. I actually have a little bit more interest in that plot now because it has just been so long of like, ooh, look, mystery. What are we doing? Who knows? Now we finally get around to, okay, we're catching superhumans. What for specifically? Not clear, but at least we have a driving motivation. So all in all, I'm all right with what the story's doing. I think it's actually in a slightly better place than it was previously. I'll give this issue I'll give it a 7. I think it's a solid enough issue on its own. It gives some backstory, and it's honestly, this feels like what should have been maybe like issue 5, where now we finally have all the pieces of how they're going to start moving in a much more clearly defined direction rather than this vague, oh, but like what's happening first? How's the world currently at? So yeah, I'm enjoying it right now, and I hope that it continues down this trajectory. And that's it. That's all the comics put out by DC Comics this July 2nd, 2014. And now, your question of the day. That's right, I remembered this time around. Ahem. Your question of the day is, and I would love for you to put the answers to this in the comments down below if you are watching the YouTube version, or find the YouTube version if you're not, and that is, do you think, in the long run, it matters whether or not a comic is delayed? I'm mainly talking about Superman Unchained in this sort of question, but like, in a general sense, do you think that like 5-10 years from now, any comic that's delayed today, do you think people are really going to care? Specifically, if it's a massive delay. Love to hear your opinion. I'm not going to share mine. Looking at next week's comics here, we got 14 of them. Pretty much a standard week, except for one major exception, which obviously I will get to. And the comics coming out in no particular order are Batgirl, Birds of Prey, Detective Comics, Superboy, Superman/Wonder Woman, Green Lantern Corps, Justice League United, World's Finest, Infinity Man and the Forever People, New Suicide Squad, Constantine, and our 2 weeklies, Batman Eternal and New 52 Futures End. So 2 things with that. One, I actually forgot New Suicide Squad was coming out. I didn't even like put it on the screen here. Totally blanked on that. I'll fix that for next week's episode. But regardless, the other thing, the more important one, and is the comic that I skipped, is Grayson. Issue 1 of Grayson's coming out. Now, whether you like or hate Grayson, so be it. I don't think I've ever heard anybody outright say they hate Grayson, unless their name is Dan DiDio, but I think that it is an important comic because you can point to this comic happening and say, this is the moment where the DC universe gets like defined in terms of writers. Because with Tom King on this as his first DC comic, this shapes how the next 10 years of comics landscape are going to be. And I think it's super important to hop in on that just to take a look at it. So yeah. Super excited about that. Everything else, yeah, all right, it's cool. We've got event book over in Superman, Wonder Woman, and Green Lantern Corps, same as it ever was in Superman, Doomed, and Uprising, but beyond that, pretty average week. Other than that, if you have anything that you would like to add, go ahead and hit us up on one of numerous different social media platforms we have, either comments down below, or we have a subreddit, a Discord, and a Patreon. I would suggest the Discord, unless you have some spending money, in which case I would highly suggest the Patreon. Do it. Anyway, that's going to do it for me. Thank you very much for watching, tuning in, blah, 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 blah. You know the drill. And if anybody's even listening at this point, thanks. I really appreciate it. And as always, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.